Puma, Richard, Dreyfussy, and Mary, I built a new life for myself at sea. Once the ice caps melt, this entire planet will be mine!
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. Yeah, it's part 3, the unplanned part 3 of our Diddy Kong Racing Spotlight series. I should have worn a condom. I'm Hyle Russell.
I'm Cameron Reigle.
I just love, Cameron, you are so low-key, and you're like, you don't want to have any part of it whenever I go a little blue. So I just love immediately starting the episode by making things very uncomfortable. You're welcome, by the way. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, clearly. So this is the, I promise, final part of the Diddy Kong Racing Spotlight episode. But if you're listening to this, you should love Diddy Kong Racing. You should be saying, but Hyle, but Cameron, I want more than 3 parts. I want 4 parts. I want 5 parts. I want a whole season of Diddy Kong Racing episodes. You're not going to get it, I'm sorry. But
take that up with Kevin Callahan. He needs to give us more to talk about.
Well, I was going to bring this point up. So with this episode, part 3, we have now had more Diddy Kong Racing Spotlight episodes than there have been Diddy Kong Racing games. That's a cold splash of water in the face. And it's not like Rare and Nintendo and others haven't tried. Like, of course, Diddy Kong Pilot, Donkey Kong Racing were supposed to be follow-ups. And then there was that planned, well, it was more of a pitch made to Nintendo for a Diddy Kong Racing follow-up by people who did not understand how the rights to the Diddy Kong Racing characters worked. Matt Corna and I talked about it last fall on the Kongversation, but despite all of that, there has never been another Diddy Kong Racing after the DS version, which we canonically hold as a separate adventure. Cameron, shut up. I know you have different opinions on this, but
I just think that it's up for debate is all.
It's up for debate, and granted, anybody who disagrees with me will lose, but it's up for debate, sure. But yeah, despite Rare's intentions at the turn of the century, despite other desires, despite Kevin Callahan's shameful rumor mongering, hashtag Kevin Callahan, we have not gotten another Diddy Kong Racing, and in light of the 20th anniversary of the game, it makes me realize how weird it is that we had this game that broke the Guinness World Record for most reservations. Was the big holiday release for Nintendo and one of the biggest holiday releases of 1997 in video games, and it's kind of forgotten about today, but maybe we should table that for the actual legacy discussion at the end of the episode. All right, let's talk about Diddy Kong Racing. So last week, I believe we ended things talking about the items of Diddy Kong Racing, and we talked about like power sliding and what have you. Am I wrong there? Did we leave off any other place?
We left off, talking about the item system. I remember because we had a lengthy discussion about magnets.
But that's every week, Cameron. So I want to talk about...
That's the real legacy of Diddy Kong Racing, magnets.
Yeah, magnets. I want to talk about the structure of Diddy Kong Racing this week. I want to talk about the worlds of Diddy Kong Racing. I want to talk about the modes of Diddy Kong Racing. And, of course, the legacy of Diddy Kong Racing. Then we got some calls to take. People called in with their personal recollections, thoughts, and feelings for Diddy Kong Racing. So let's talk about the various modes of the game. And obviously the main appeal of Diddy Kong Racing, the main selling point besides, according to Nintendo, hovercrafts, was the adventure mode. So this is what really set it apart from Mario Kart 64, which, keep in mind, had only come out 10 months prior to this. So the fact that we had 2 very similar games being pushed by Nintendo at the beginning and end of 97 the fact that Diddy Kong Racing did so well, I think, speaks to how much they were able to sell people on adventure mode. And having a kart racer be layered into what was kind of structured like a traditional 3D platformer adventure, and I say traditional 3D platformer adventure as if there was a long legacy at this point. The genre was pretty much invented 1 year prior to Diddy Kong Racing, but regardless, it was basically hanging the structure of a kart racer onto Super Mario 64. I think that's a fair way to put it, right? I mean,
I would say so, and I think I see one aspect of this appeal being like something that 3D racing games really lent themselves to was, you're no longer bound by this like Mode 7 effect or the various things other racers of the previous eras had kind of done to compensate for the hardware just not being there. So, I mean, I remember a lot of times as a kid in 3D racing games just deciding, you know what, I don't want to race, I just want to, let me just drive around, see how far I can go before the invisible walls catch up with me, or,
yeah.
This is just something new you could have fun with in a 3D space with a vehicle.
Yeah, one of the great joys of Mario Kart 64, and Cameron, it's fortunate that you were also on that spotlight earlier this season, because we can kind of compare notes from what we talked about earlier. But one of the great joys of Mario Kart 64 that still makes it preferable to most latter-day Mario Karts that followed it was the level of exploration, going off the beaten track, sort of breaking the game in places, looking for shortcuts.
Peach's Castle
and just seeing how
is the standout.
Yeah. But seeing how far you could push the boundaries of what the game would let you to do, and it, a lot of times it wasn't much, but it was appreciated when you could. Besides the courtyard from Super Mario 64, there were also things like going into the train tunnel in the Calamari Desert, or even just like
the very little things that make the world feel bigger than it is, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say even little things like jumping off of the track in Rainbow Road and then landing on the track far beneath it. Just crazy shit like that the game would let you pull off if you could get it right. I mean, in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, for as good as that is, and as much as it's the best Mario Kart game in many ways ever, it still kind of holds your hand a little bit too much. It keeps you on a leash, and some of that's down to, online play. They don't want people to, go nuts, but it kind of sucks when you try to do a leap like you did in Rainbow Road and you have Lakitu just immediately grabbing you.
Or you race on Peach's Castle and the castle is gated off.
Yes. So that was the great joy of Mario Kart 64, among other joys. It being kind of the first 3D kart racer, it obviously just felt fresh, when it came out. But Diddy Kong Racing said, okay, that small level of exploration of Mario Kart 64, we're gonna make that like the main point of the game. And obviously racing is still like the heart of the game, but you do so much more than just racing. And the mere fact that you have an overworld and you can drive around and explore at your leisure, and there wasn't too much to see or do on Timbers Island and the overworld itself, but it still felt so much cooler than just selecting tracks on a menu, because it was immersive. It was, I am in this world, I am on Timbers Island. Like in Mario Kart games, there's that part of my brain, and I realize this is just the way my brain works. I am wired in a very, very weird way. My master gave me a criminal's brain, apparently, and I'm also afraid of fire. But I always have to account for okay, I'm in this Mario Kart Grand Prix. I'm racing for, let's say, the Mushroom Cup. Okay, so I'm racing on this track. All right. Now the race is over. Now we all have to board a plane, go to a completely separate part of the Mushroom World, set up. I imagine this takes place a day or 2 days later, maybe a week later. I don't really know. There's always just this weird.
Now you've got me hungry to see like a 3D Mario platformer where like they're gearing up for a Mario Kart and Bowser kidnaps Peach, and you've got like all these excavators around Peach's castle.
Yeah, the landscapers have arrived. Yeah, we're here to take out the tennis courts and put in the racetrack. What do you want us to do with all these tennis balls? That's what landscapers sound like in the Mushroom Kingdom, by the way. You heard it here, people. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Mario Party 5, I remember, that was the first game in the Mario Party lineage where Donkey Kong was not playable, and I remember fan-wanking, because it came out like 1 week before Mario Kart Double Dash, so I literally remember my fan-wank was, Donkey Kong is too busy prepping for Mario Kart. He does not have time for this board game nonsense, so he's only agreed to kind of be a supporting character this time around, but he doesn't want to actually compete because he's too busy physically and mentally prepping for Double Dash. Yeah, it would be fun to see like the build up to a Mario Kart game in an actual Mario game and like how that actually comes about. But yeah, anyway, it takes you out of the like world. Like the Mario Kart series, it feels like you're getting glimpses, but you're not seeing the complete adventure, as it were, even though it's not really an adventure, I realize. And maybe I know that's not the point of Mario Kart, and I realize I'm weird, and I'm the only one who cares about this, or one of the only ones who care about this, but the joy of Diddy Kong Racing is you saw everything. I mean, maybe not everything. I'm sure the characters had to eat and go to the bathroom and sleep, and you didn't see that part, but that all happened when you turned off the game. Oh, okay, it's bathroom break time. We're gonna go to Taco Bell and try to score 64, win a free Nintendo 64. No, but for the most part, you saw every pertinent part of the kart, plane, and hovercraft racing adventure. And
that was the conceit of the story. Timbers Island is famous for being covered in racetracks.
Yeah, that is their tourist attraction. I mean, as ludicrous as that is, the thing is, if you establish it, if the developers and the creative talent behind the game establish it, I will believe it. You just give us a little bit of context. And it's such a simple thing, and something Rare has always been so good at, for the most part. Banjo Pilot, they just didn't care. But for the most part, Rare has always been good at giving that little bit of extra world building that just completely sells this ridiculous notion of an archipelago, and fleshes it out so much that you really feel like you are visiting Timbers Island. You really feel like you were there, and you feel like you understand how this place works. And it's a place that you just wanted to keep revisiting as a result. And you didn't necessarily get bored with Diddy Kong Racing because there was always kind of a new way to experience it and approach it. And I don't know, as somebody who plays the Mario Kart games in single player and really views the multiplayer as just kind of a bonus, it really meant so much to have such a robust single player. And it's something that I still can't believe that, even though a lot of kart racers afterwards did borrow elements from Diddy Kong Racing, that's all they've really borrowed is elements, bits and pieces. But as far as a cohesive whole, there's never been another Diddy Kong Racing.
Yeah, I think we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about the legacy, but yeah. Well, I guess I'll save my thoughts for then.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just... It's staggering because we're 20 years on.
But it definitely seems odd that, say, like, almost immediately after Diddy Kong Racing, and granted, because of how development works, I don't know how long this was in the pipeline, but I remember at the time it was a big deal that Crash Team Racing had a very similar, like, hub world set up for the way it organized its single-player campaign.
Yeah.
But outside of that franchise, I haven't seen too many, like, one-to-one attempts at a mascot racer with a hub world like that. At least not one that's been a high-profile success. I could be wrong.
Or the just vast variety of vehicles. And yeah, there are only 3, but it fundamentally changes the way each track plays, especially the ones where you can use all 3 vehicles on a track. And, you know, I remember, you know, when they introduced, like, the underwater segments and the gliding segments in Mario Kart, and how that was touted as such a big deal. Fundamentally, it didn't really change too much in the way the game played, and that's the cool thing about Diddy Kong Racing is you play a track with a plane, it's going to feel so much different than it will a kart. Or,
that was something I remember, like, when Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed was announced, people immediately looked at it and said, oh, this is what Mario Kart just did. And that game, Sonic Racing actually had boats and planes. This was way more like Diddy Kong Racing. Yeah. Well,
why don't we do... We're getting too forward thinking here, and we're getting into what ifs and... lamenting.
We've driven straight into the lake on Jungle Falls. Now we have to just throw the car in reverse and back out instead of trying to drive all the way forward through it.
I remember doing that. I remember it. It was such a weird splash of cold water on your face, literally, I guess, just because you were like, oh no, I'm stuck and I have to work my way out. Like, at first I was like, am I completely stuck in this lake? And then you're like, oh no, I'm just inching my way out. Oh, now I have to fight my way back to the front of the pack. And I also remember thinking, wow, those red tires on those carts sure are like they must enable the car to float really well. Like, they must be very buoyant. So in my, like, weird middle school aged head canon, I always associated those red tires on the carts as, like, very, very sturdy, like, flotation devices. Which, I don't know. It still works for me, honestly.
I mean,
all right, well,
Magic Elephant made him up, so yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, a Magic Elephant and his anthropomorphic stopwatch friend. So, anyway, you got the adventure mode, and then you've got basically 4 and then 5 worlds in adventure mode, and like Super Mario 64, you have to unlock them as you go. So in each world, you've got the 4 regular races, the racetracks, and so your goal at first is just, I'm gonna race on this track and finish first. And then if you finish first, Taj comes down on his magic carpet and he gives you a golden balloon. You know, I'm not going to do the accent because I don't want to be offensive, but he says, this is for you. And it's so nice because it's just like, I like how Rare always kind of folds these mechanics in with character. You know, instead of just a gold balloon appearing and it like circling around Diddy, no, a genie comes down on a carpet and hands it to you.
And this cutscene happens every single time that you get a gold balloon in a race, but you can skip it after the first one. But it's nice that it happens.
It doesn't get old. In my opinion, you're always glad to see Taj. You're always glad to see Taj enter and the air around you become weirdly purple, like a Prince concert. And this was like the era where Prince had kind of fallen off the map. He was like the artist formerly known as Prince. He was being treated like a joke. So I like that Taj kind of co-opted some of that like purple magic a little bit. I really feel like Taj carried the torch for that color in between Prince eras.
Are you sure he wasn't just a Jimi Hendrix fan?
Well, there could have been that too. I don't know.
Because of the purple haze.
No, I got it. I got it. No, I got it. And then Tricky, you know, was in with his prequel game had a foxy lady in it. So and then Banjo was in a game with a voodoo child, and Angry Orchard tastes really good when you realize you cannot take a joke any further. Angry Orchard. For when your comedy fails. So you get these gold balloons, and you beat all 4 racetracks in a world, the primary racetracks in the world. And then you get access to the boss. And the boss is basically another race, but instead of racing the other characters, the other 7 primary characters, you get to race a solitary, oversized animal who more often than not will cheat. So let's talk about the bosses a little bit, because we have not talked about the characters of the bosses and their role in the story. Now, the 4 bosses that you face in the 4 regular worlds of the game are Tricky the Triceratops, there is Bluey the Walrus, Bubbler the Octopus, and Smokey the Dragon. And we'll kind of save actual discussion about these characters when we go over the worlds themselves. But what WizPig did was, these are not the minions of WizPig in a sense that they work for him. These are actually beloved inhabitants of Timbers Island, friends to the animals, cherished by children and the elderly alike. And what WizPig has done is he scoped out the island and said, "You're a big, fearsome creature. I'm going to brainwash you." Pazow! And then this boss character was then enthralled with WizPig's magic. WizPig had him under a spell, but only just a little bit. They could occasionally break through the spell, and in the sense that they were kind of aware of themselves while they were still being forced to do WizPig's bidding.
This is a really interesting story conceit, and I kind of like that it wasn't just WizPig picked the 4 biggest jerks on the island, and they agreed to this. And
yeah.
You, as you said, you kind of see, I think, a little bit of their true selves shining through in that, like, all 4 of them are much more polite than WizPig is.
Well, here's the thing. You beat them, and then they're always very congratulatory. Well done! They all have weird as shit voices, save for maybe Tricky.
Well, they also, if you lose to them, they just say, you know, tough luck, kid, come back whenever you're ready.
I think it says in the instruction manual that if you beat them, WizPig's spell starts to weaken. So I don't know if they actually, like, if the left hand knew what the right hand was doing there when they were, like, crafting this, but...
This isn't like a Mumbo's face thing, is it?
Right. Although we do see, after WizPig's defeat, that the boss characters are freed from his spell because they're celebrating with the other characters. So
I think except Bubbler, but I think that might be because he's like a water-based animal.
Yeah, and
I think everybody just kind of assumed, no, it's because he's a jerk, but I kind of think he just didn't want to get out of the water.
Well, they could have put him in the lake underneath the little pond underneath the waterfall, in Taj's Meadow, but then that would have raised the question of how did he get there in the first place and how does he get out of it? And wait, is this a saltwater lake? Wait a sec. So I think they just thought, Bubbler's off in the ocean. The party's gonna go down to the beach, and then Bubbler
somewhere.
will be a part of it.
He's there somewhere.
Yeah.
He's not a party pooper.
No. But when you look at, like, because we've had brainwashing plots later on in the Donkey Kong universe. Obviously, Donkey Kong Country Returns, all of the bosses in that game are brainwashed by the Tiki Tak tribe, but you never really got the sense of tragedy that you get with the bosses of Diddy Kong Racing, and I think it's because you do see their underlying, pardon the term, humanity. I realize none of them are human, but you see that kind of sense of morality. I realize this all sounds ridiculous. We're talking about a kid's go-karting game
What's
with
also
furry animals.
Helps it that it stands in contrast with Wizpig himself, who is acts like a big magic toddler.
Yeah, he is basically a narcissistic... He's
a schoolyard bully.
He's a narcissistic bully. He actually reminds me of Pigma Dengar from Star Wolf. And besides the fact that they're both pigs, just their very abrasive nature. Actually, I think who else in Star Wolf calls you a worm? Am I imagining that, or was that did Leon call you a worm or something? I don't know. But Wizpig calls you, little worms. That's his go-to insult, his put-down, which I guess is the E-rated game. Was this rated KA? I forget the actual timeline here. I can look it up. But
I always assumed the worms had to do with them being much smaller than him. You were like ants to me.
Right, but that is still his go-to put-down, which I guess is the all ages equivalent of calling them sawed-off motherfuckers. And I'm looking it up now. I'm looking for the box art. I looked on our gallery, and for some reason, the front box art does not have the rating on it on our gallery. Okay, thanks, DK Vine. You're worthless. Anyway,
that can be our slogan for next year.
When we bring back the random site slogans, yeah. I know it doesn't really matter if it's rated KA or if it's rated E, but it was actually rated KA. I just looked on Google image search, so this was before E ratings took effect.
I know that there were some titles when they did the million seller re-releases, they updated them to an E. I think Banjo was like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Diddy Kong Racing even got to be re-released because of the Conquer thing.
I think it got a player's choice. Yeah. But
riveting podcasting as I type this in to figure it out.
I don't think the re-release stayed on store shelves for very long though, because the Conquer thing hit.
It was rated E for the million seller release. There was one 1998 Racing Game of the Year stickers on it as well.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. I think that's the point where I realized I did not have to buy all of the Player's Choice reissues, that it did not count as a new game. Because I shamefully bought Donkey Kong Land, Donkey Kong Country, and Mario Kart 64 when they were re-released, because I had to have the game cartridge with the new sticker on it. And I at the very least, I have matured out of that level of insanity and completionism, but that is still a black mark on my soul. So anyway, yeah, the boss characters, though, they are there is a little bit of pathos to them, and I think it helps that you see them celebrate at the end of the game. You see Tricky's family, oh, this guy has a family that he was taken from. So, and this is basically how Diddy Kong Racing's story works. It's not really fleshed out, and you only get bits and pieces, but the bits and pieces you do see really stir the imagination and really help you then fill in the blanks. So even though you don't see all of this drama unfold, your brain just kind of accepts that it is there. And that is, it's basically taking very little and making the most out of it. And it's a kind of game that really just stokes the embers of your brain, of your imagination, and really makes you consider all of the possibilities of how this world works. And of course, this is catnip to me. And it's the kind of game that, you would ponder when you're not playing it. Well, I wonder how this works in the world of Diddy Kong Racing. And then it would give you a little scrap. It would give you a little tidbit of information in the instruction manual, or in the in-game cinemas, or maybe even in dialogue. And you would be, okay, so that makes sense. I like this very efficient form of world building that you don't even really see in modern, Nintendo games. Even Retro's Donkey Kong games, for as much world building as there in, the background of the stages,
they prefer to show rather than tell.
Yeah, but there's always something missing. It's like you're always missing parts of the information, and you're wondering, did they think this through? What's this? And then, I don't know. I really just admire the level of storytelling that the Diddy Kong Racing team did. And I think the bosses, which got me on this topic of conversation, the bosses are really just the epitome of that. That you don't need to say they're brainwashed. They could just be aliens from Wizpig's planet, or they could just be assholes who work for Wizpig. They Bishi bosses of Timbers Island. They're all in on this occupation of Wizpig.
I mean, it's like all of the NPCs in say Donkey Kong 64, where they won't give you a golden banana unless you do something for them, but they very clearly belong to Donkey Kong.
Yeah, and they for some reason really have intimate knowledge of who Lanky Kong is. That frozen tomato, Nippy the frozen tomato. Oh, I could write multiple essays on Nippy the frozen tomato. He's a ghost too. He's a frozen tomato ghost.
He lives in an ice castle with a puzzle inside and knows an orangutan.
I'll say this, I don't want to rag on Donkey Kong 64 too much, because Log knows I've done it enough on this show, but the level of storytelling in DK64 was not up to the standard of Diddy Kong Racing.
I love that tomato.
Yeah, look, I'm fond of Nippy. I'm fond of Sprout. I'm fond of Booker. I'm fond of the whole weird, mindless idiots who ask for your help cast of Donkey Kong 64. But I'm just being honest here. I have a lot more affection for the bosses of Diddy Kong Racing. So much so that I completely get why the team decided, hey, we should make a prequel backstory to Tricky and have it be set on an alien planet and have all sorts of complicated lore about it. Because you want to love these guys. They're gruff, they're lovable, you feel sorry for them, you want to help them, even though they're cheating bastards when you race them. So anyway, you beat the bosses. They're well done, kid. Well done. I can't do bubbler. What's bubbler? Yeah, there we go. You beat the bosses, and they unlock the Silver Coin Challenge. So this is really an efficient way of getting more replay value out of these tracks. So this is something like Mario Kart hasn't really done anything with, and it's really cool. Instead of just saying, okay, now you got to do these tracks but in 100cc, you got to do them in 150cc. No, none of that bullshit. All it is you got to play the tracks again, but this time you've got to find the 8 silver coins on each track, and you've also got to finish first. These silver coins, they have, in this version of Diddy Kong Racing, they have the N64 logo on them, and it basically, we mentioned exploration. This forces you to kind of explore go off the track a little bit. Sometimes put yourselves in disadvantageous situations. Angry Orchard has slurred my speech. Either that or my dentures are falling out like Donald Trump. Oh, burn. Take that, President. But, a lot of times getting these silver coins, you really had to plot out a strategy because you're going to have to fight for your position to get back into first place.
Yeah, I'd say like normal mode of operation for this is like trying several times to first figure out where they all are, then try to get as many as you can in lap 1, get any you missed in lap 2, and spend the rest of the lap 3 trying to catch up. Does that sound about what you did?
Yeah, so lap 3 would always be the serious racing lap. Lap 1 would be get the majority of the silver coins. Lap 2 would be get the ones I missed. And yeah, lap 3 would be put the pedal to the metal and try to bring this home. And some of them were challenging. Some of them were really challenging. There's
Greenwood definitely Village, a few that kind of make you go off the beaten path of the track you're on. And yeah, the well in Greenwood Village is one that's pretty well disguised.
I remember some of them feeling annoying at the time, but I think it was just annoying because I had to do it more than once, and it was never I'm going to throw my controller across the room and turn off the game in a fit of rage. It was never that.
It was something that I think was like hard at the time, but in retrospect I appreciate the challenge, even if it might have frustrated me at first.
It was so unlike anything in Mario Kart, and it was honestly a little daunting and intimidating. 8 silver coins in 3 laps, and I have to finish first. It's a
nice integration
stressful.
of like a skill set you don't expect to be using in a racing game like this.
Right, and I think once I got accustomed to it, I think it really only frustrated me in that intimidating sort of way the first world I was doing it. By the time the game progressed and I got more comfortable with it, I was kind of looking forward to the challenge a little bit more. But it definitely was something out of the ordinary. To this day, it's out of the ordinary, and I only wish I could have appreciated it as much as I do now back then. Because I would love for something similar in Mario Kart or any modern kart racer that really brought that platforming, collectathon exploration element into your actual race. But in a very like efficient, streamlined way where it never felt like ridiculous. It was just a matter of fact. This is the way it is.
Before we move on from this, I did just want to point out like a little bit of trivia. I think the reason that they're silver coins with the N64 logo on it was for parody with the golden rare coins that used to be in the game that were later replaced with bananas.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes... And it would make sense that Rare, being the egotistical bastards that they are, would make Nintendo the silver coin and make them the golden coin. You saw a little bit of them poking at their corporate overlords during the N64 era. Obviously, there was Conker chainsawing the N64 logo and then polishing the Rare logo. But then there would also be
the canon
other
death
elements
of the animate N64 logo.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. But, I like that. I like that the N64 logos are on the coins. I would always loved Rare's product placement for both themselves and Nintendo in this world. And Diddy Kong Racing had a ton of them. There was a ton of Rare logos on the track, ton of Nintendo logos. And it just always felt like, rather than coming up with... And this is going to sound weird coming from me, but I honestly don't care for all of the fictional sponsors in the Mario Kart games that are like companies owned or endorsed by these characters, because they're never consistent from game to game. And it just makes you think, what do these characters do in their spare time that they have so many business ventures?
On the one hand, I personally really like the fake ads, but on the other hand, what the hell is in a Burning DK?
Burning DK is an energy drink that Donkey Kong sponsored in the Mushroom Kingdom.
Right, but what's in it, and why is it called Burning?
Oh, it's gonorrhea. It's just gonorrhea in a can.
DK really needs to read his endorsement contracts.
Yeah, Donkey Kong, your energy drink sounds like a venereal disease. What is wrong with you? And he's probably like Arnold Schwarzenegger doing commercials in Japan. Well, I can do commercials. I can do product placement in Japan because none of my Western fans are going to see this. It's fine. This is pre-YouTube. Donkey Kong's like, this is another dimension. I'm going to endorse all sorts of weird shit and make some money. But I'm actually fine with Burning DK because it's so weird. It kind of transcends my usual hang-ups about this sort of stuff and just goes into the sublime. But no, I don't like that, like, Luigi has, like, multiple restaurants and, like...
That could be any Luigi.
That's true. It is a very standard Italian restaurant name. But I just like that, oh no, Nintendo and Rare, the actual companies, are sponsors here. Because we know Rare, the company, sends their explorer Horace Golightly to the Rare Archipelago to study these things to make games, so...
Yeah, and I enjoy that both companies are apparently morally dubious in-universe because they sponsor the boxing match between the Kongs and K. Rool. The very rigged boxing match.
They don't take sides in the Kremlin v. Kong war. They're neutral bystanders. If there's money to be made, they'll exploit both of them.
You heard it here first, folks. Nintendo and Rare, war profiteers.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Really, I mean, the Stamper Brothers are the modern-day Oliver North. So, you do the silver coin challenge. You got to finish all 4 tracks again. Get all 8 silver coins. Finish first. Okay. So then you face the boss a second time. 1 times, 2 times, 3 times the walrus. And this time around, they're harder, they're faster, they're, no pun intended, trickier. And this is the one that's really challenging, and you pretty much have to take all of the skills you've accumulated in the 9 races prior to this in this world and put them to the test. And I mean, it's not too hard, honestly. I mean, but it's more hard, it's more challenging than what you face up to this point.
Usually, I think all of them are more challenging also in the form of a physical object. If they dropped obstacles before, they dropped them this time. I think Tricky's didn't Tricky's have like a boulder introduced, or am I misremembering that? Was that in the original race?
I know, I remember the boulder, but I honestly don't remember too many distinctions between the first race and the second race, other than it's more hard. But once you successfully overcome that, and the great thing about bosses is you can use like missiles on them, so it's not like it's just you're racing this large, fearsome beast. No, you can still use all the same skills you normally use. It's just going to be a little harder to get around them because they're so big.
And they can't. So in a way, aren't you cheating right back?
Yeah, but no, I mean, they take off before the race even starts, and then they lap at you. So no, they cheat aplenty. Anyway, you beat the boss, and then you can unlock the trophy race. So there, in each lobby of each world, there is a trophy room that has a display case similar to our YouTube art this season of the Kongversation, and basically, you can go go up to it. If there's no trophy in there, there won't be a trophy, but that's where your trophy will appear. And what the trophy races are it's basically a Mario Kart style cup race. So it's all 4 races, one after another. You accrue points based on where you finish, and that's it. It's literally a Mario Kart cup race.
Yeah, I think this is the only challenge in Diddy Kong Racing for which you do not have to finish first every single time.
Right, because if you get more points than the other racers at the end of all 4, you'll still win. So it's exactly like Mario Kart here. And what the trophies do is you get gold trophies, and not only will you get a WizPig trophy in the display case in each lobby of each world, but there's also a billboard down on the beach near the lighthouse, and you'll get trophies displayed on the billboard until you get all 4. And this will help you unlock the final world once you beat WizPig. And there are also challenge levels in each world. What challenge levels are Diddy Kong Racing's answer to the battle mode of Mario Kart 64. But unlike battle mode, these vary. Each one is different in what you have to do, and this variety, you would think it would be a lot more popular with people, but out of everybody I talk to, I seem to be the only one who really appreciates the different challenge levels, and I don't lament the fact that it's not just blasting the crap out of each other. Cameron, what are your thoughts on the challenge levels?
Well, on the one hand, I like the variety, but on the other hand, the battle, Icicle Pyramid and Dark Water Beach are my favorite ones. So,
really, see, I like the egg one, the Fire Mountain. For me, that like kind of capture the flag type of gameplay. I will say though that for as much as I love the challenge levels of Diddy Kong Racing as a whole more than Mario Kart 64's offerings, I do think they fail to live up to the grandeur of Block Fort, which I still think is the quintessential battle mode in any kart racer.
Yeah, I could see that, yeah. Block Fort is really good. What are you going to do?
I mean, it's... even though, like, I much prefer, like, the capture the flag style elements of Fire Mountain, Block Fort is just so much fun. It's basically GoldenEye in karts. It's just the best.
But, I will give Diddy Kong Racing the edge in one regard, and that's that you can play battle mode against the computer. And you have to for the sake of the single player mode.
Yeah, and in the adventure mode, when you finish first in a challenge level, you get a piece of the TT amulet, because you don't have enough collectibles already. The TT amulet is kind of a mystery up until the very end of the game.
I do remember in, like, peak mid-2000s, people saying, oh, Diddy Kong Racing is a collectathon, because you get the amulets and the keys.
It's just visual representation for unlocking things down the line.
God, there's so much to collect. What am I ever going to do? This is too much.
Oh, won't somebody collect me a fainting couch, because I just can't keep track of it all. Yeah, people are just looking. All of that anti-collectathon stuff, obviously they have a point with Donkey Kong 64, but they took Donkey Kong 64 and they used that as the justification to railroad the rest of Rare games out of high critical standing. So, you know what? We can admit Donkey Kong 64 is mostly garbage. It has a lot of redeeming elements too, but it's mostly garbage. But don't hold that against Diddy Kong Racing or Banjo or any other Rare title from this era, because that is not fair. Well, Cameron, here we are. Let's talk about the individual tracks of Diddy Kong Racing. We're not going to get too in-depth here because, I mean, there's only so much to say. You go around 3 times and there's dinosaurs walking around. But we'll get into some of our favorite bits, and we'll start with Dino Domain. Now, real quick though, in our live stream, we've got the one, the only Kevin Folgers, who is saying that each Diddy Kong Racing world is based off the seasons of the year. Do you find that an accurate statement?
Well, I mean, I could see Sherbert Island being summer and Snowflake Mountain being winter, obviously, but of Dragon Forest and Dino Domain, which one is fall?
Dragon Forest would definitely be autumn.
I think most of the trees on Timbers Island are evergreen, so it's hard to figure it out.
Yeah, there's definitely though like a fall kind of theme to it. Maybe it's just like the time when you have all the Ren fairs going on, and obviously you had Haunted Woods, which is kind of like spooky, and then you had like like the haystacks and the windmill. It had a very fall theme to it, but I would argue that Dino Domain isn't really spring. It's more like also summer, or just that vaguely prehistoric.
There's a lot of death for something very springy.
Yeah, it's kind of like just that prehistoric, like permanent tropical climate sort of. So I wouldn't call it spring unless Future Funland is spring. And perhaps it is. We never really get a good sense of the season there. But, all right, well, let's get into it. Dino Domain, obviously a prehistoric world. The first time dinosaurs appear in the Donkey Kong universe. And obviously dinosaurs would go on to appear in Banjo-Tooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day. And they would only appear in the mainline Donkey Kong series in Donkey Kong Country Returns, but as reanimated fossils. So I always like that there's not actual dinosaurs in the Donkey Kong Country games.
Yeah, and when they tend to appear, it's a spot specifically designated for, like a spot that's marked as being special for having them.
Yeah, and of course, Star Fox Adventures would offer the possible retroactive continuity that all of these dinosaurs in the Rare Archipelago are actually Saurian refugees. After the Aparoid invasion, King Tricky led an exodus across the stars to Earth, and they found Timbers Island. And why does Timbers Island always attract space aliens? That's a good question. Is it like actually like seen from above? See like the totality of the island. I'm not like trying to find fault with your map, Cameron. So don't, because we never see the full island in game, because it's the we only see like the tip of it. The rest of the island, we don't know how far it goes. It's kind of obscured. But is it shaped like just like a giant bullseye, or is it shaped like? Does it say like?
I mean,
land here?
That mountain that Tricky, the mountain that he climbs up could very well look like a bullseye from above.
It does. It actually does. So yeah. I don't know. I just find it interesting that obviously in this game Whizpig invades, but then if we accept the retcon of the Star Fox additions to the Donkey Kong universe via Tricky, then obviously he came to Timbers Island, and he probably brought lots of dino friends. Which is interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I remember in my map, which I drew that has Timbers Island on it, there's a little joke about Star Fox Adventures in it, because I didn't make it too overt, but if you look at Timbers Island on that map, you can see in the side of a volcano the ship from the end of Star Fox Adventures, and that was kind of me extrapolating that maybe Tricky ended up where he ended up because he's a dinosaur flying a quadruped dinosaur flying a spaceship. And he may have had some difficulty with that.
Yeah, I just always pictured Tricky like traveling with the Earthwalkers and thorntails and various dinosaurs on a giant space ark. Like a Battlestar Galactica type situation, which, Rare, if you're listening, that's a story I really want to see. If you guys can even use Tricky anymore, which who's to say? I don't even know. Ancient
if you
Lake.
make him a Cylon, does that make him fair game?
Yeah, well, but or maybe like one of the head angels. I speak from experience. I'm always talking to Tricky. He always appears during moments of self-doubt and weirdly tries to seduce me, which I'm okay with because he's a gruff but passionate lover. Ancient Lake, the first track of the game, and dirt basic. There's not much to Ancient Lake other than giving you a rudimentary introduction to the feel of Diddy Kong Racing, and it has a lake which you can get into, and you quickly learn there's no tortoise on a cloud to haul your ass out of unfortunate situations here. Every situation you get into that impedes your progress, you have to work your own way out of.
Yeah, I'd say it's your standard like oval track, but it's kind of not. It does have like one little variation in the oval,
and it's got a green dinosaur. I guess we can retcon him to be what is the tribe from Star Fox Adventures? That's like the Brontosaurus. I wanted to say High Top, but that sounds more like a hairstyle than does a dinosaur tribe. But I think it's High Top. But I guess we can retcon him to be a High Top if we're gonna go completely nuts with the SFA retcons. But he's a Brontosaurus essentially, and there's also the first key to be found on this track, and it's just on a ramp off the track in the grass. It's pretty obvious, but it's still weird to encounter the first time through. But
if you don't know you're looking for it, it's easy to miss.
By the way, the ramp, it's a stone ramp with the Rare logo on it. So it's just, I just love how this ramp looks a little dull. What should we do with it? I'll put our fucking logo on it. That way the kids will buy more of our games. And to be fair, this kind of product placement did work because this is around the time the Rare logo became a huge selling point on boxes. Like, Nintendo would just put a giant Rare logo on the front of a box, and that way you knew, hey, this is a Rare game. Yeah, anyway, Ancient Lake. It's got a lake. It's pretty ancient, and it's also got a dinosaur on it. Yeah, this is one of the tracks where you can race all three vehicles, although kart is the default. So, yeah. Did you, after first beating a track, did you go forward, or did you try out the other vehicles first?
In single player, I just go forward.
I think at first I like tried to do all three with all. I didn't know if I would have to do them all with each vehicle, like if that would unlock anything. But I realized.
Yeah, I think once I realized TT's Ghost only showed up if you did it with a proper vehicle in time trial, I kind of stopped bothering. I'd still play them in multiplayer with the other vehicles, but as far as single player goes, I don't think I really bothered too much.
I did in time trial mode. I did still beat it with every vehicle, even if it did nothing towards unlocking TT. I still wanted to have that on the board. Because again, I have slight OCD, and it's a crippling, paralyzing part of my life.
Diddy Kong Racing's not a collectathon, but you made it a collectathon.
Yes. Fossil Canyon is the second track, and it is feels a lot more prehistoric than the first. It's got the stereotypical kind of rust-colored sky, like the sunset or whatever. It's a canyon, so it's a lot less green, but it looks like something out of the Flintstones or Jim Henson's dinosaurs, or
I was gonna say a Roadrunner cartoon.
Oh, that too, but I'm thinking more in terms of the actual thematic setting. And I don't really have much to say about this one. This is a little bit more varied and in-depth. There's obviously like tiers on this one. Like you could go to the left and you'd go underneath a fallen tree and you can get a red balloon, or you would go up on the hill and and choose between green balloons or blue balloons. So this was kind of a track that started introducing a little bit of variety and a little bit of strategy, having like snaked paths on the track. But yeah, it's still pretty basic. So next is Jungle Falls. And I love Jungle Falls. This is like something out of a Donkey Kong game. Obviously, the name, it sounds like it could be a Smash Brothers Donkey Kong stage. Jungle Falls, it has the part where you go through a temple. And I think it's notable because with the plane, even though the cart is the standard, you can use a plane and only then can you fly in the upper part of the temple. So it gave you incentive to want to retry it with another vehicle.
As probably did Falling in the Lake, because the hovercraft wouldn't have that issue.
Right. Even though the hovercraft was kind of a pain to use on land, boy, once you got to a body of water, it was just so liberating to be able to zoom right over and not have to use a bridge. I would fall in that lake, the little pond off the bridge, so many times with the cart, and
definitely, especially with somebody like Crunch, I think.
Well, I remember like Crunch running into me a couple times because I'd be playing as Diddy, and I remember getting knocked into the pond. So, and the way they positioned the bananas on the bridge, it was like on the very edge, so that would happen more often than you would think. A little bit of risk-reward
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the first track where you get a hint of what the difficulty curve is going to be like in this game.
Right. And I also want to point out there's a giant dinosaur fossils that you can drive through near the end of the track. And so that suggests to me that there were dinosaurs on Timbers Island, like native Earth dinosaurs, before the Saurians got there. And they were just attracted to this. I wonder if that's weird for them to know that, oh hey, our kind sort of lived on this planet before. They all went extinct. Oh well, let's not look too much into it. Let's just settle here. I like to think like Tricky and the rest kind of have some nightmares about what really happened to the dinosaurs.
I mean, also, they're alien dinosaurs, so it may have just been, like, some other species to them.
True,
maybe
yeah.
The original ones on Dino Domain had feathers. We can't know because they're dead.
Well, I've often argued the reason the dinosaurs in the Donkey Kong universe do not have feathers is because they are aliens, and it's perfectly acceptable. So shut up, you nerds. Hot Top Volcano, my god. Now this is like a quantum leap forward. So we've had 3 tracks where the difficulty slowly builds, but you still are introduced to each track with the basic cart. So now Hot Top Volcano comes along, and all of a sudden it's a plain track. You can race with a hovercraft after you beat it, but initially it is just a plain track. And it is iconic. It is, I think, out of Diddy Kong Racing tracks, it is one of the top, probably 3 Diddy Kong Racing tracks, as far as it being memorable, and as far as it just being a lot of fun, and a lot of that is just down to the David Wise music.
I think something I really like about this track is it's a very good way to introduce the player to the concept of the plane. Because it's a very what is an environment that a car absolutely has no place being in? It's the floor is lava.
Right, which you would think that would also apply to hovercraft, but turns out this lava is actually pretty watered down. It's diet lava. It's soda fountain lava. It's only mildly hot. It's like a hot spring apparently. Yeah, it's magma, but it's perfectly safe to dip your plane down into it and also bounce around on a hovercraft. No doubt the character is getting splashed in the face.
I mean, later on when you encounter the rubber ice, it starts to make more sense. Or less.
Yeah. Just all of Bumper's discarded condoms. That's all that is. So anyway, this is before they knew his horrifying public sexual spectacles, and they just thought, "Wow, the ice sure is rubbery here." Hot Top Volcano, it's lovely. There's also another green brontosaurus / high top roaming around. I should also point out there are pterodactyls or cloud runners flying around all of Dino Domain, but I remember Hot Top Volcano, they fly, and I remember finding out, you can fly right through them. You cannot run into them. They are essentially just decor. Yeah, they're not actually stage hazards.
As opposed to the large brontosaurus types, which you could run into, and they would be audibly displeased about that.
I do remember trying to ram a pterodactyl or two before realizing he just flew right through them.
Before we move on from these Dino Domain racetracks, can we talk about a dinosaur that's notably not here?
Oh, I will let you have the honors for this. I was going to bring it up myself, but I'm glad I don't have to be the one.
So, in the intro cutscene of Diddy Kong Racing, when Bumper is introduced, he's flying through a rocky area in Dino Domain, and running alongside him is a large yellow dinosaur. I think the intent is he's some kind of raptor, like a very enlarged raptor.
Yeah.
But, he is not anywhere else in the game.
The yellow dinosaur from, the beginning of Diddy Kong Racing. Yeah, I don't know if they, had planned for him to be in the game somewhere, or maybe he was the original boss of the world. We've never asked anybody from the Diddy Kong Racing team about this. What was the yellow dinosaur originally there for? Surely he cannot have just been there for the opening character credits. I don't know. It's a good question. We should have prepared ahead of time. I actually did ask the DKR team on Twitter some questions, but I don't think anybody knew the answers.
Maybe he narked on Bumper and he's in witness protection. That's why Bumper was so displeased to see him in that intro. He said, "Oh no."
Yeah, I swear I saw this badger beating off in a fossil. It was disgusting and disrespectful. So Tricky's course. I don't know if that's the actual name for it. That's what Super Mario Wiki calls it. So I jotted it down mentally. But Tricky's course is where you race Tricky, and as you said, it's a winding track up a mountainside that from an aerial view sort of resembles a bullseye or target. This is surprisingly difficult for the first boss race of the game, and it's one of those things where you can easily trip yourself up if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't know where the shortcut is. The shortcut is part of the way up the mountain, and it's basically hidden by a bush. You can go through the mountain, and it has a zipper on the inside, and if you take the shortcut, it's very unlikely that Tricky will catch you.
I think there's also a bit of relief if you persist to the end. I think Tricky slows down very slightly before he gets to the top of the peak.
Yeah, he has to catch his breath, because by this point Tricky is in his late 40s, his early 50s, which I don't know the lifespan for an Earthwalker, but he's not a spry ball-loving child anymore, that's for sure. And he gets a little winded near the end. Can I also point out that Tricky seems to have a golden structure, a golden like statue to himself at the top of his mountain?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that like an Our Founder kind of thing?
Yeah. See, it kind of doesn't make any sense in the context of Diddy Kong Racing. But if you apply the Star Fox Adventure / Assault lore to this game, then suddenly it becomes, this is our king Tricky. We're going to honor him in the traditional Rare Archipelago way by having his head displayed in some sort of statue.
I mean, if you consider all the other heads on mountains in this game, this is the most, like, modest one.
Oh yeah, it's practically demure. Like he's just like, oh, you know, it's Tricky. Honestly, if Tricky led a giant space exodus from the Lilat system to Earth, to Timbers Island, he deserves a much bigger statue than this.
They melted down all the rare coins to make it.
I thought you were gonna say they melted down the dead dinosaurs who died in the Aperoid invasion. And
no, that's what's powering the cars.
Yeah,
not canon.
Well, you know, it would be good if like that was one reason Tricky was so salty. You know, it's like my mom and dad are you're running off the fumes of my mom and dad, Diddy. So it should have been an alternate line delivered by Kev Bayless, who voiced Tricky. So obviously we've been joking about Tricky. For those of you who are wondering at home why we're making all of these references to Star Fox Adventures, it is because Star Fox Adventures is a prequel to Diddy Kong Racing, and it shows the origin story of Tricky. Now this is much disputed, I realize, but you kind of have to understand the history of Dinosaur Planet. Dinosaur Planet was developed by primarily the Diddy Kong Racing team as their follow-up to Diddy Kong Racing. It started off as a more direct sequel to Diddy Kong Racing, and somehow Tricky remained a part of it from conception to the very bitter end when it became a Star Fox game.
Dinosaur Planet was an awful lot of things.
It was. And somehow the lore of the dinosaurs of Timbers Island were a part of it from the beginning. Then it kind of took over the whole concept of the game. And then when it became a Star Fox game, it still obviously had to hang on that Dinosaur Planet structure. But, you know, I've heard arguments that, no, it's just a reference to the Diddy Kong Racing character, but it's not the same Tricky. It's the same Tricky, and it's, even though we got some hemming and hawing from Lee Loveday back in the day, they've all copped to it at this point. It's Tricky. Nobody's fighting it anymore. And
it's
so
just more fun if he is.
Yes.
Is really the core of
if it bothers you, if it honestly bothers you that the entire Star Fox series is actually a prequel to Diddy Kong Racing, unclench your buttocks, because it is fun. It's fun, it's silly, it's weird, and it's just one of those things that, for as much as Nintendo fans seem to want to make all of Nintendo interconnected in this day and age, it's I'm amazed that this is not brought up more often, and it's not like celebrated.
I think like the humanoid James McCloud in F-Zero gets brought up more often.
Yeah. But again, I think part of that is Diddy Kong Racing is somewhat forgotten by the
and you think
GameCube.
F-Zero isn't?
Okay, but by the GameCube generation onward, because references to Diddy Kong Racing are non-existent in Smash Brothers. In like, Rare references Diddy Kong Racing more than Nintendo does.
You get like a textual allusion in Brawl, but it's because they probably legally can't do much more than that.
They can reference Diddy Kong Racing, they just can't, like, get into all the characters without Rare's permission. So it's one of those weird situations where Nintendo owns or would have to own the trademark, and of course they own Diddy and Crunch, but and Tricky to an extent. There's the argument that, well, maybe Rare owns the adult Tricky and Nintendo can own younger versions of Tricky.
Right, but in addition to characters, you also get into like scenario rights, meaning locations, vehicle designs, the storyline of the game, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Characters is relatively cut and dry, as not cut and dry as it is.
I think Rare feels confident. Like, essentially, I think part of the problem with Diddy Kong Racing is, even though everything is sorted out legally, it's still a gray area for both companies. So Rare is more emboldened to use elements of Diddy Kong Racing, and Nintendo just doesn't want the legal hassle of even like approaching that minefield or bubble field.
And I would suspect the reality is, if either one did anything with the property and it wasn't as brazen as we put Diddy in an Xbox game or we put Banjo on the Switch without your permission, they'd probably be fine with it.
Yeah, honestly, in this era where Phil Spencer kind of is almost openly begging for some sort of working relationship with Nintendo, and that could just be good PR. He could not be serious, but I think everybody would be cool with it, and I think it's just one of those things where, well, this is part of both companies' legacy. We can't really change things now, so why not just both draw from the well? It's kind of like the character that was owned by both DC Comics and Marvel Comics that was introduced in the DC versus Marvel crossover event from the mid-90s. What was that character called? It was was it Access? There is a character.
You're the comic guy. I'm afraid I don't know.
Okay, there is Access. There's a character that is owned by both DC and Marvel. They share the copyright on him, and because of that, he's barely used. But basically, the character Access, he can travel between both the Marvel universe and the DC universe. It's interesting. Look it up. Access. So I guess maybe Tricky is the Access of Rare and Nintendo. Nintendo felt confident enough to use Tricky in Star Fox Assault and also give him trophies in Smash Brothers. But I don't know if that means like Rare would be afraid to ever use the adult version of Tricky again, or if Rare could have some sort of legal ownership of Tricky. Say, oh yeah, wink wink, it's not the same character. Wink wink wink. I mean, look, we've got Royston. We got this ambiguous goldfish appearing in Rare alumni games that aren't Rare. So why not a Triceratops?
Maybe he could just show up again in a Rare game and he's changed his name to some other word that starts with T, and then problem solved.
Back in the live stream, Kevin said that Diddy Kong Racing is truly the mecca of the DKU. Banjo, Conker, and Tricky all in one. Hopefully we'll be adding another character to that lineup pretty soon. If ambiguous tweets by Greg Mails are anything to go off of, Mamie TT. Mamie TT is going to be in Sea of Thieves, but we'll save discussion for that for maybe an episode coming up really shortly. Who knows what we're recording this when Rare is going to be showing off a trailer for Sea of Thieves at the Game Awards tonight. And I recorded a conversation back in Season 1 when Cranky Kong was revealed, back when it was the Spike TV game, whatever. So maybe, wouldn't that be something if TT starts trending on Twitter when we're trying to wrap up this episode? I'll have to keep one eye plugged into social media. All right. So let us move on to what is it? Where are we? Oh, Fire Mountain. Right. So I've already talked a little bit about this. It's the challenge level of Dino Domain, and it is essentially you have to hatch 3 dinosaur eggs. You're in the plane, and you face off against 3 other racers. You're basically stealing each other's eggs, and whoever is the first to protect their egg and hatch it wins.
Yeah,
3 eggs and hatch it wins.
ostensibly the premise is that you grab your egg from a pit in the center of the arena and take it to your portion of the arena and leave it there while it hatches. But in the time before it hatches, other players can fly by and snipe the egg from your nest and bring it to their own.
Yeah. I love this one. I thought it was so much fun. I thought it was engaging. I thought, like, aside from Block Fort Mario Kart 64, this is my favorite type of non-racing kind of 4-player challenge, face-off, battle, whatever, in any kart racing game.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you play them, how many eggs do you grab from the center and how many do you steal from other people?
I initially start from the center. I only start grabbing from other people when there are no more eggs left in the center, and basically it's looking at the progress of the other racers and trying to determine, oh, they're getting too close to victory. I've got to, at the very least, slow them down. So I'll steal one of their eggs. Even if they're...
I think for the computer-controlled races, when I played it, I would mainly try to go from the center unless it was obvious somebody had been stealing my eggs. And then I would immediately just want retribution.
And I would try to protect my eggs, but then again, if somebody else was getting too far or too close to either tying or surpassing me, then I would have to just venture out and just hope that Pipsy, it would always be Pipsy who would steal my eggs. It never failed. It always Pipsy. But I would have to hope that Pipsy wouldn't be, feeling too cocky and try to steal from me. But I love Fire Mountain, and unfortunately, the challenge modes, from my perspective, they were introduced on such a high note that they had nowhere to go but down after this. And I still like the other challenges, but as far as being inventive and a breath of fresh air from Mario Kart, everything else kind of pales compared to Fire Mountain. So Snowflake Mountain, man, a lot of mountains, a lot of they sometimes reuse terminology a little bit too much in this game, because
I should point out, we're going on to Snowflake Mountain, but the track listing in the game has Sherbert Island as the second world for some reason.
But nobody considers that the second world.
Right, because it takes more balloons to get inside the entrance.
Yeah.
And that's actually another thing I guess we should touch on. This game kind of has, to an extent, like some non-linearity in its progression. Like, you don't have to do Dino Domain from the first race in Ancient Lake all the way through the trophy race. You can race a few tracks in Dino Domain and stop when you have enough balloons to go check out another world. And I think for Snowflake Mountain it's only 2. So yeah. I mean, you could even probably find that many just laying around the overworld and go there first.
Right, and I'm sure a lot of gamers did it that way. For me, it was just, why would I want to go off and abandon this world? Unless you really had a fetish for snow. For me, it was just like, well, I might as well just see everything there is to see here before I move on,
For me, I think it was, I would hit a difficulty wall at some point in Dino Domain. Again, I played this game when I was very young.
No excuse.
Yeah. So that leads nicely into the first racetrack of this world, which is Everfrost Peak, because I'd say this is another fairly leisurely level when you're just starting out.
it's another one that's introduced to you via the plane. And or am I right? Yeah, it's in the plane at first.
Yeah, it's in the plane.
It's one you can eventually use a car and a hovercraft on, but you're introduced via the plane.
Can you use the car? I thought it was hovercraft and plane only.
No, in the original N64 one, you could use the car. In the Diddy Kong Racing DS version, you cannot use a car because the water is no longer frozen because of climate change.
That's the strongest argument you've had so far for that continuity.
Everfrost Peak with an asterisk, depending on the carbon footprint. And granted, they're driving cars around, and I think these are all gas guzzlers. I do not think these are electric. So
what you don't see in Diddy Kong Racing is the thick layer of smog over Timbers Island.
But what you do see above Everfrost Peak, and this, so many people have not noticed this. I think I've been the only one who's really pointed it out. Wizpig's planet is in the sky above this track. In the night sky, you see a ringed planet that is the same ringed planet that is in the patterns, the tiled patterns for Future Funland. It's Wizpig's planet. So I know some people will bring this up and say, well, this means that clearly this game does not take place on Earth. It takes place in some sort of alternate solar system, maybe the Mushroom Earth. And to that I would say, no! Clearly there's a wormhole opened above Earth that's connected to Wizpig's planet, and that's what he takes the lighthouse through, or that's what the characters take the lighthouse through to get there. But the wormhole is just always open, and you can see Wizpig's planet, but it doesn't mean it's in the same solar system or it's neighboring the Earth this game takes place on.
Or it's just a cool texture detail.
Oh, Cameron, shut up. That's so illogical. No, clearly they thought this through. There's a Stargate because they knew that they couldn't get Teal'c in the game, but they could at least allude to a Stargate. And that's the next best thing to unlockable Teal'c. They could have had a frog in Taj's Meadow with a Gould patch in his stomach, and you knew that frog is a Jaffa, probably Teal'c. You run him over. So, the Everfrost Peak, there's also a lot of snowmen, really intricately decorated snowmen hidden up on the sides of the canyon that you kind of always overlook unless you just go off the track and just start exploring. I love this about the tracks of Diddy Kong Racing. There is so much attention to detail and so much that's not really hidden, but it's sort of just left of center of what you're normally looking at. That the only way to ever see
it's a racing game, so your eyes are on the road.
So the only way to ever see it is just say, fuck it, I'm done with this race. I'm gonna just see the cool shit that Rare has put on the sides of the track. And that was really driven home with Everfrost Peak. I remember that Nintendo Power even did a where am I kind of feature a month or two after Diddy Kong Racing came out, where they would take screenshots from Diddy Kong Racing of these weird roadside attractions that players would normally miss, and then you would have to guess which track they were from, because more often than not you would miss them, which I thought was really cool and kind of cool on Nintendo Power's part to even think of doing that and realizing that Diddy Kong Racing afforded that many opportunities to do that. So like I said, the exploration element in Diddy Kong Racing is really, really fleshed out, more so than Mario Kart 64, and it's something that's just criminally overlooked when people talk about the game. There's no reason to go looking at snowmen in Everfrost Peak, but it's cool that you can. Moving onward, let's talk about Walrus Cove. One of two very holiday season-y tracks in Diddy Kong Racing's Snowflake Mountain. And I always associate this one with the Matt Corna song.
Yeah, we'd be remiss not to bring that up for this.
Let me just play it right now. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Jubilant Kwanzaa, a festive Bodhi Day to you all. Here's Matt Corna's perennial Christmas hit. Take it away, Matt.
When the snowman brings the snow, well, he just might like to know if he's put a great big smile on somebody's face. If you jump into your bed, quickly cover up your head. Don't lock the doors, you know that Santa Claus, sweet Santa Claus, is on the way. Well, I wish it could be Christmas every day when the kids start singing and the band plays. Oh, I wish it could be Christmas every day. But it isn't, but it is. Well, I wish it could be Christmas every day when the Pope starts wanking as the children play. Oh, I wish it could be Christmas every day. Now the frosticles appear and they've frozen up my beers. So we'll lie by the fire till the sleep simply melts them away. Why is it never Christmas when I want it to be? I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to kill myself now. Well, I wish it could be Christmas every day, and Jesus agrees with everything I say. I wish it could be Christmas every day. But it isn't, but it is. Well, I wish it could be Christmas every day, but it isn't, for fuck's sake. Oh, I wish it could be Christmas every day.
Come on, you lot, the Pope loves this shit.
I wish it could be Christmas every day when the kids start singing and the band plays. I wish it could be Christmas every day.
The Pope is wanking, the Pope is wanking.
I wish it could be Christmas every day when the Pope starts wanking and the children play. I wish it could be Christmas every day.
Well, I wish it could be Christmas every day, and Jesus agrees with everything I say. I wish it could be Christmas every day. It isn't, but it is. Well, I wish it could be Christmas every day, but it isn't, for fuck's sake. Oh, I wish it could be Christmas every day.
Yeah, that's only somewhat offensive now, especially now that it's a completely different Pope. So he's not even talking about the same Pope anymore in that song, but it still brings a smile to the face and warms the cockles of my heart and other various similarly named regions of my body. Yeah, but what I always think about in this track is the loop-de-loop.
Yeah,
that,
the
that
like
you go-
Hot Wheels / Sonic style loop-de-loop. Like that's a curved sheet of ice.
And again, before Mario Kart 8 introduced anti-gravity and upside down tracks, it never really felt like upside down. Yeah, Diddy Kong Racing was having you go upside down like a roller coaster, and there were a couple tracks they did this in, but yeah, this is basically like a built-in zipper in a track, and you just get a speed boost, and then you go around the loop-de-loop. It's fun. It's exhilarating. It's really making the most out of these 3D tracks. I also think about the colored lights in the hallways and the tunnels that are just very Christmassy and holiday, just like the red and greens. And like I said, this track really brings to mind the holiday season, and I think that's why. But
this track also has the rubber ice I was mentioning before, doesn't it?
Yes, bumpers, condoms. Yeah, I always just took that to mean that the inflatable tires of the carts, the very buoyant tires, they're so buoyant that they just bounce off the ice.
I'll contextualize what we're talking about for anybody who doesn't know, but, well, you probably already do if you played this game, because you've almost certainly driven into this ice.
Yeah.
There's a final section of the track near the finish line that sees you kind of precariously driving over snow patches amid icy water. And if you drive into this water as opposed to the water in Jungle Falls where you will start floating, driving into this will bounce your car back onto the track with an audible bounce, a cartoony bounce sound effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unexpected. that's for sure. But I like that. It was just it was a way to, like, rather than just have you spin out. Rather than just have you spin out or get, like, stranded on the ice. It was just it was a different way to do it, and it kind of made sense within the physics of Diddy Kong Racing itself. So moving on to Snowball Valley, the first track and only normal track in this world that takes place during the daytime. Snowball Valley, it's where you can find the key to Snowflake Mountain, and I believe the key is right at the start of the stage. Don't you have to, like, go to the left? Is it to the left?
It's right by the start/finish line. I remember that much. And you do kind of have to, basically, if you were actually focused on the race, violate your common sense.
Unlike the violations that Timber engages with, on himself in the public sphere. Speaking of violations, though, there are also googly-eyed snowballs. What's that?
Did you just implicate Timber? I think you meant Bumper there.
I said Bumper, didn't I?
No, you said Timber.
Well, if I did say Timber, then screw it. He's part of it.
He's in trouble with his parents all the time. What you can blame it on him.
He's lashing out. He's like, look, this is not my fault that a giant space pig genie came down and invaded our island. And so if I get in trouble for this, he's lashing out. He's lashing out against always getting grounded. So him pleasuring himself in public is his way of reclaiming control of his life vigorously. Anyway, giant snowballs with googly eyes. This is something I would normally have a problem with, and I should have had a problem with this back in '97 because this is the kind of thing I would rail against.
Banjo-Kazooie wasn't around to make this okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the kind of shit I would, like, mock Mario games for and be like, well, the cartoony realism of Donkey Kong Country doesn't need eyes on the sun, and it's so much more immersive, and oh, smell my gaseous emissions. And then here comes Diddy Kong Racing, and we're putting googly eyes on snowballs. And obviously we have a whole lore around the googly eyes, in part thanks to our own fanon with Taj, and in part thanks to what Yooka-Laylee brought to the table this year, with the googly eyes actually being a species that can possess inanimate objects and bring them to life. So, anyway, giant snowballs, yeah, they roll around. They actually gave me a bit of trouble, I do recall. It was kind of hard to avoid them sometimes, especially in the thick of a race, when you were trying to compete against 7 others, and especially when you're trying to get the silver coins.
Yeah, there's also another notable feature of this track, as we just talked about, stuff thrown into the background. The giant faces of Pipsy, Bumper, and Crunch in the mountainside.
Yeah.
Which, again,
yeah.
as I said, Tricky was one of the more modest ones in that regard.
Well, I also like that. Why those three, and why, like, Crunch? Why Crunch? Like, I could see Pipsy for sure. Because Pipsy lives there, but Crunch, he's the weirdo Kremlin spy, and maybe like TT or Taj or whatever, they were just like, well, we'll just celebrate 3 random racers. Let's just pull their names out of a hat. And so they created snow sculptures based around them. It's kind of stuff you see all the time in a Mario Kart game. Like, you had the giant snowman Mario, but it's kind of weird to see here, really. I don't know. It's just it seems a bit unusual for Diddy Kong, because again, Diddy Kong Racing is not a game that glorifies its own characters through like fake sponsorships and there are no like tracks built around a character. There's no like Tip Top Swamp stage or whatever. They're all unique tracks that take place on Timbers Island, but they have nothing to do with the actual characters. I remember the closest is where you race Whizpig, because that's supposedly the mountain village that Pipsy lives in. But that's really not like articulated or
no, and
expanded
it's
on.
Nothing but Future Funland belongs to Whizpig in this game. That's kind of the whole point.
Yeah. So Frosty Village is basically what happens when the holiday season takes a big dump in a video game and leaves the robust smell of it emanating out from the toilet bowl. And no matter how many times you flush, you're still going to smell it for close to an hour or two afterward. Frosty Village leaves an impact. When I say that it makes no sense for Diddy Kong Racing to take place during the summer, I only really mean that Diddy Kong Racing came out during the holidays, and it had one of the most holiday centric magical tracks, magical levels, a level that epitomizes the holiday season.
Maybe they really do wish it could be Christmas every day. But this whole track looks like a Christmas postcard is what it looks like.
It looks like a Christmas village, like the little, like Christmas, like the Dickens villages you can get. You can like buy at like Michael's or Sears.
It's just the quintessential marketable image of Christmas is what this looks like.
It's very Thomas Kincaid, yeah. I mean, I don't know much to talk about. I love when you're coming down the massive hill, and then there's the houses at the bottom of it, and then the part where like you're going through like the street lights and it's a little foggy, or am I? Yeah. Anyway, it's great. It's basically
one of the little bits of intentional fog in the game.
Yeah, which is funny because the Nintendo 64 was infamous for just layering on fog effects. Like Turok was like the game that was like most well known for just dumping fog in the game to kind of obscure the draw distance, and Rare games famously, I mean Nintendo too, but Rare really like pushed for having like clean, clear visuals, no fog, we don't need it. And Diddy Kong Racing was like clear and open, and whenever they did use fog, it was very minimalistic, almost to say like, we don't need to use this. This is just here as an effect. Don't get the wrong impression.
Yeah, it's used to the advantage here because it's winter. This is like your light snowfall obscuring your vision.
Right. Bluey the Walrus. Unfortunately, we never got Star Fox Adventures Walrus World, but Bluey is a giant walrus, and you race him on the hovercraft, which is interesting because this is the first time you have to use the hovercraft if you're going in chronological order.
And it doesn't involve liquid state water.
No, you're just sliding down a hill. It's basically a makeshift toboggan or sled, which is kind of cool. Bluey also has a giant homage to his own face, although it's not golden, so it's bigger than Tricky's, but it's not as self-indulgent as Tricky's. But you see his head as you're going down the hill. It's above the tunnel or cave or whatever.
It's like a theme park ride is kind of how it's, and that's a recurring theme here.
It basically, you are having a sled race against a walrus, and there's giant candy canes too.
It's a very linear trek too. Like, that's another thing we can point out about Tricky and Bluey's tracks. The first two bosses do not have a standard 3-lap race. They are strictly a point A, point B. Tricky's is down when Bluey's is up.
Right.
Sorry, I got that reversed. Bluey's is down, Tricky's is up.
So it's basically just a straight shot. And I found Bluey to be a little bit difficult. I think it's because it was just a straight shot and it was all downhill, and it was like... It was different than what I was used to. Even Tricky, I got the hang of fairly quickly, but Bluey took a little bit time to acclimate my brain to.
I'd say of all the bosses, I generally had the least difficulty overall with Bluey, and I think that's because it felt like once you got in front of him, you could pretty easily stay in front of him. And if you did that right at the beginning, you didn't have much to worry about.
Can we talk about Bluey's voice a little bit? What was his voice? Was he like an old man? What was going on with the Bluey?
He seems like very much a young man affecting an old man's voice. Is kind of the impression I get. He's like a slightly raspy Santa, a little bit. I don't know. Can we maybe inform the choice by pointing out his like tuxedo / bib that he wears?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, an old man and a bib, that's not really an uncommon thing. I mean, when you're a baby and when you're elderly, a bib comes in handy. Hell, I could use a bib because I'm always spilling my food over my shirt. So I'm not gonna knock anybody who feels like they need to use a bib. If it was more socially acceptable, I would be bibbing it up. They would call me Bibi Netanyahu. I would be wearing a bib so much. I went for that over a Bluey CK joke because I thought we already have enough bumper jokes in this trilogy of episodes. I don't need to cross that threshold. No, Bluey is weird and he's difficult. He is probably the boss character who fans... I don't even know what the general fan opinion of Bluey is. I don't think he's brought up quite as much as the other 3 or 4 counting Wizpig, but I know like the thing he's most known for in my mind is our reoccurring joke at the turn of the century that he was going to be the focus of the next Star Fox adventure game, and that would have been great if all 4 bots characters would have gotten elaborate prequels, and maybe not even part of Star Fox. Maybe they could have been grafted onto other Nintendo franchises, like maybe Bluey could have been in that snowboarding game for the N64, that 1080?
1080?
Yeah. The Avalanche or whatever the fuck that was called. I rented it once with my friend Elliot, and it was just a one-time rental. I sniffed a Blockbuster that day, I can tell you that much. But and then of course Bubbler could be grafted onto the Wave Race franchise, and Smokey Zelda. There you go.
Really, I was trying to think of one that would be like completely wrong for Smokey. Zelda seems a little too thematically appropriate.
Okay, Metroid. Smokey could be a pal of Ridley.
He's too big, so they put Smokey in there.
now released too big for Metroid. Oh no. All right. What is the challenge race of Snowflake Mountain, Cameron?
That would be Icicle Pyramid.
Oh, I actually thought your audio was glitching out there for a second. I was like, oh no, more technical difficulties. I'm going to have to edit out.
Nah. I just remember that being one of the few places where the slight reverb added to TT's VA is very noticeable.
Yeah. So Icicle Pyramid, this is basically a Mario Kart battle mode. It's very traditional. Get hit 3 times and you're out.
And it's a multi-tiered again pyramid. You kind of can gauge which level of the pyramid your opponents are on based on the map in the bottom right corner of the screen.
Yes.
The larger the dot, the further up in the pyramid they are.
Yeah. I liked it. You know, it felt like a little bit of a come down after Fire Mountain to just go into the traditional Mario Kart battle mode, but I think Diddy Kong Racing did a serviceable job. They did a better job with battle mode than a lot of latter-day Mario Kart games have done. So, I mean, I think Icicle Pyramid, yeah, obviously Block Fort is the golden standard in my book when it comes to battle mode, but Icicle Pyramid is if Mario Kart 8 had something on par with Icicle Pyramid, that would have been terrific, and I wouldn't have complained.
Yeah, I'd also point out like the kind of unconventional way this game depicts your health.
Yes.
You can call it that. Mario Kart kind of has established the balloons as its signifier of remaining hits you can take. 3 balloons, 2 balloons, 1 balloon, you're out after that. Diddy Kong Racing, you start with bananas, and you lose 2 for every time you're hit. And if you have 2 bananas left and you get hit, you're eliminated. Which I remember the very first time I tried battle mode, that kind of tripped me up a little bit. Because it doesn't really register, I think, or at least didn't for me, that early in the game that, oh, when you get hit, you lose 2 bananas.
Yeah.
It's just a carryover from everything else, but in this context, it's a little weird.
It's a bit weird to have bananas recontextualized as like a health item when in any other part of the game they are there for speed and nothing more. So, they could have just come up with something else, but I can see why they didn't want to do balloons or they could have just had a health meter, but I guess bananas afforded them a little bit more flexibility. So, I mean, it's fine. It's easy to figure out. So.
It's just one of those things that's a little head tilting when you first see it, and then you kind of just shrug and move on.
Right. Well, speaking of head tilting, it's weird that the third world is a tropical, like, beach/island world called Sherbet Island. Like, named after a frozen dessert. Granted, a frozen dessert that's generally fruit flavored, hence the tropical connection. It just a little strange.
It's a little weird, and I like have to remind myself that like it's ingrained in my mind as Crescent Island, and I have to remember that's not the name of the actual larger world, because that
yes
makes sense.
Well,
I mean,
I have the same problem.
It's not crescent-shaped either, but I don't have the weird mental disconnect of sherbet, really?
I have the same problem with Snowflake Mountain in that I always first want to just call the whole world Everfrost Peak, because Everfrost Peak sounds like a more appropriate name for it than Snowflake Mountain almost. And, I mean, that's splitting hairs, but I think Everfrost Peak is just more memorable than Snowflake Mountain. And honestly, Dragon Forest...
Everfrost Peak sounds like a mountain you would climb and never be heard from again.
Yeah, K3, K4, or just K Racing. Dragon Forest, I also sometimes want to refer to it as Windmill Plain. So everything but Dino Domain and Future Funland, I always just want to use the first, or
right,
I guess in
it's the
Sherbet
more
Island's case,
all-encompassing
second.
names that stick.
Yeah. But the actual first track in Sherbet Island is Whale Bay, the inaugural normal hovercraft track. Whale Bay is a track you can only ever use the hovercraft on. No planes, and obviously no carts. And this is... I mean, it's notable in that there are whales and that you can, jump up on the back of the whales.
It delivers exactly what it promises.
Yeah, there's a lot of downed pirate ships in Sherbet Island, and you can get on one in Whale Bay by hopping on the back of a whale. And this is the introduction to whales in the Donkey Kong universe.
It just occurred to me, can we tie like the myriad of broken down beached pirate galleons in Diddy Kong Racing into Sea of Thieves?
Hashtag TT and Sea of Thieves. Spread it. Pass it on. Make it go viral. As viral as Burning DK.
Yeah. I like to think that Sherbet Island was a pirate haven back in the days of the Sea of Thieves. And it's apropos the number of times, Cameron, we play Sea of Thieves together, and we're going to an island, and we always put on TT's voice when we're going to that island, just because anything that sounds remotely similar to Crescent Island... And I don't want to get into the names of some of the Sea of Thieves islands, because I don't know what's NDA and what's not, what's public and what's not at this point. But there's some that sound similar to Crescent Island. So whenever we're like, what island are we going to? Somebody always has to say it in TT's voice. But Whale Bay, it's also notable for the buoys that are orange balls with googly eyes and mouths. Not googly mouths, but they have small mouths underneath the googly eyes. So the Diddy Kong Racing team was really embracing the all of this inanimate shit is alive aspect, which, granted, one of the main characters is TT, the stopwatch, so the game does ease you into this kind of nonsense.
These will be one of the first things you see in the entire game, because they're in the intro.
Are they?
Yeah, when Timber's introduced, he's in the hovercraft on Whale Bay.
Yes. I was trying to remember. I thought you meant like the part where the camera pans down to show off Wizpig's face on the mountain. I'm like, where was an googly-eyed orange buoy in that? I do not remember that.
Oh no, I don't want to implicate the buoys in that takeover.
It would be great if after you beat Wizpig at the end of Future Funland and his missile blows up, it would be great if his whole body was like incinerated, and the to be continued in the game was actually the camera focuses on one of the orange buoys in Sherbet Island, and it like suggests that Wizpig's consciousness was like transported into this buoy, and it's like the buoy starts laughing like Wizpig. Which is why, obviously Wizpig was never able to enact a worthwhile revenge scheme, because there's only so much you can do as an inanimate buoy. Anyway, Whale Bay, it's pretty forgettable in the grand scheme of Diddy Kong Racing tracks. I would put it in the bottom 2, quite honestly. Maybe it's my least favorite track in Diddy Kong Racing.
I think I've always sort of thought of Sherbet Island as a whole as the world that justifies the hovercraft, because it sees a little bit of use outside of it, but it sees the heaviest use in it. And I think Whale Bay is your introductory course for the hovercraft, the same way that Ancient Lake was your introductory course for the entire rest of the game, but mostly the car. So I
That's
think
that's a fair
very,
point. That's a fair point.
I think it's very simple for that reason.
That's a fair point, even though I do have a little bit of objection to you having an introductory course to one of the 3 main vehicles in the game at the beginning of the 3rd world. I mean, I get it, and it never felt too unnatural, but I think the reason Whale Bay just sticks out as or I guess the more appropriate terminology would be fails to stick out, because it's just because by this point in Diddy Kong Racing you are entrenched in the game and the world and the mechanics, and then Whale Bay just feels like I was gonna say a wet fart, but a wet fart is pretty memorable. A wet fart is something that scars you, so this is basically a small little poot after a Taco Bell meal where you failed to score 64 and you get a shitty Donkey Kong plastic tree maze that you're going to eventually lose in a pile of shit, and then find it when you go home one Thanksgiving and you're looking for some of your old stuff and you find it in the basement covered in spider webs. True story, happened this last Thanksgiving. Crescent Island is the second track. And just so we're clear, everybody, Crescent Island is the second track of Sherbert Island, which is an islet to Timbers Island. You got that? So we're basically, it's like a Russian nesting doll of islands at this point. Crescent Island is a kart-based track that you can also use a hovercraft on, and you're going around the beach. And Cameron, why don't you talk to people about Crescent Island, since you always mistake the world itself for Crescent Island?
Well, I mean, first off, is it really shaped that much like a crescent? It's kind of, I mean, vaguely, but yeah, this is a very dry land level. In this world, there's kind of like a 50-50 split between the all hovercraft and the more land-based levels. Crescent Island, aside from the shoreline, which is also where you find the challenge key in this world, you kind of have to drive into the water.
Yeah, that's right.
This is one of those scenarios, I think, where it does actually help to go replay the stage with the hovercraft.
It's a good thing you didn't have to find these keys in GoldenEye to unlock multiplayer modes. It's like, oh, in this stage, James Bond has to put a gun in his mouth and pull the trigger. The key is inside of his skull.
It's also good that you don't actually have to win or even finish the race when you find these keys, because a lot of them leave you in a really terrible spot. You can quit to the menu immediately after you get them.
So that's what I always did. Let me be honest. I don't think I ever finished a race where my primary objective was grabbing that key.
Yeah, once I figured out you could quit, I would do that immediately.
Yeah. It was the equivalent of start and select, in the Donkey Kong Country games, where you went back and got creme coins or bonus coins or a hero coin, and it was just like, okay, let me just nab that. No need to finish the stage. I've got what I came for. Unlike Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, you didn't have to finish the stage to get your items.
You also, of course, I'll point out another notable feature of the stage, the pirate ship that you drive onto and then out of.
That's a huge part. I completely just bypassed. I was like, it's a beach, and you were like, it's kind of shaped like not really shaped like a crescent. I was gonna make a joke. Well, maybe there's a Pillsbury factory there, and they make those fantastic dinner rolls.
I think it's just you. I think Diddy might have driven up to that pirate ship and said, I seen bigger. Because
I've seen much bigger.
K. Rool had this whole thing, and I'm just over it.
What? The rigging doesn't extend upwards to the length of 5 skyscrapers? This is a baby's toy. The N64 logo is on the sails, though.
If Diddy was Elijah Wood from Back to the Future 2 in this game, it might explain his hat being so odd.
That's the style in the alternate 2015. Shiny hats. So, they were off by 1 year for the Cubs winning the World Series. So they were just off by what is it? What was it? 18 years by shiny hats being popular with the youth, and even that was only popular in a video game with a fictional monkey for a brief window of time, one holiday season. But still. The pirate ship has an N64 logo on it, which raises some questions. If this is a pirate ship from the golden age of piracy, or
they were actually just pirating all their PlayStation 1 games.
I was thinking maybe it was like it was Nintendo executives just sail. I don't even know what they would be doing if we accept the conceit that Timbers Island and a rare archipelago is in the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know what Nintendo executives from Japan would be doing in the middle of the Atlantic, but maybe they were sailing too rare back and forth, and they stopped off. I don't know where I'm going with this. I want to talk about dinner rolls some more, because now I really have a hankering for some Pillsbury Crescent rolls. They're so flaky and buttery, and they just melt in your mouth, and you eat one and then you want another, and then oh god, I could also eat some breadsticks. I could murder some breadsticks right now. Literally, I will murder them. I will stab them with a butcher knife before consuming their flesh in some sort of weird satanic ritual. Pillsbury has not sponsored this. And by the way, Angry Orchard has not sponsored us yet either, despite plugging them every episode and destroy my liver.
Two flavors that go together.
You know what? I'm hungry enough for dinner roll that I would totally soak it in my Angry Orchard just to see. Like, that would be better than no dinner roll at this point. Alright, so, moving on. I don't know what this tangent has to do with anything. Pirate Lagoon! So I like the lore of Pirate Lagoon, because Pirate Lagoon's lore, this is a hovercraft track, by the way, is that this was a port, this was a hub for pirates back in the golden age of piracy, and now it's mostly abandoned. Well, not mostly, it is abandoned, left to the shipwrecks of days past, and this is an exciting hovercraft stage. I would say this is the best hovercraft stage in the game.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, why don't you like it, Cameron?
I have personal attachment to another one that's coming up, but I think maybe from an objective point of view, yeah, this is the best one.
Oh, I see your point, and I get your point, and I maybe even agree with your point. I think as far as racing skill, this one definitely is less straightforward than Whale Bay, and I like the aesthetic of Pirate Lagoon so much that I think that kind of weighs more heavily in its favor for me.
It's a very pretty looking stage.
Plus, if TT really does get a prequel in Sea of Thieves, and that's his backstory, this is how TT came to Timbers Island, through Pirate Lagoon. But we'll table that discussion for now.
Hashtag TT and Sea of Thieves.
I don't have anything to say other than there is a good possibility you will run into the rocks here quite a bit. Like there are some hairpin turns to make in Pirate Lagoon, and that is impossible to do with the hovercraft.
Yeah.
So you just have to kind of get good at maneuvering.
You will park it on the rocks like Bizarre Bear.
Treasure Caves is the last normal stage of Sherbert Island, and this is a surprising return to the kart. I mean, this is a track you can use all three vehicles in, but it's a kart standard track, and it is, I don't know, it's pretty unusual in that it's less tropical themed than the other tracks. It almost seems temperate in places, but the whole conceit is you're driving through a system of caverns where pirates hid their treasure, and there are more shipwrecks here.
It's like a very Pirates of the Caribbean ride with like the brightness turned up kind of environment. It's a pretty. I really like this track.
Yeah, I do too. This is kind of an underrated track, and it's not one you immediately think of when you think of Diddy Kong Racing. But when you're looking at Diddy Kong Racing bit by bit, each track, and you get to Treasure Caves, and you're like, oh yeah, Treasure Caves. That's a fantastic one.
I'd say of all of the tracks that allow you to traverse them with all three vehicles, this is the one I associate most with that concept, because I do think like there's a decent amount for you to do with all three.
Yeah, this is another one where with the plane you can get into an alcove, an upper tunnel that is only accessible via the plane. So that's always appreciated. And with the hovercraft, you can traverse the watery sections of the actual treasure caves fairly easily. So yeah. Good for you, Treasure Caves. You did it. You're a track we have spoken fondly of. This is the highest point of your life. Bubbler, Cameron. Bubbler the octopus.
Yes.
And
This is the way I sound when I perform cunnilingus as Richard Nixon.
so Bubbler is literally named for his primary mode of defense, which is shouting out bubbles. The same bubbles you can upgrade to with the weapons.
At
with
least
the droppers.
in round 2. I think in round 1 he uses the weird like burr/caltrop things we talked about last time.
Actually, in the first race he drops mines, and in the second race he drops bubbles.
Right, that's what I think.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, Bubbler, for me, he wasn't as challenging as Bluey, but he was intimidating. I remember being afraid of Bubbler. I think his voice was just so, like, over the top, like, cartoonishly, not evil, but it came across as evil. Not as much as Smokey, but he was definitely, like, I don't know. He was kind of creepy.
What was memorable
looking.
for me about him is he sounds like he's actively straining himself to leave all these obstacles for you.
Yeah, it really sounds like it's painful, like he's constipated, dropping these droppers, which I don't think he's literally supposed to be, defecating mines.
I think it's supposed to be a sound cue to let you know he's about to do something.
Yeah, it's mostly just him like, take that, but it also could be misconstrued, and to be fair, it could also be like, squids shoot ink, so maybe he's shooting these things from an orifice on his octopi body. You don't have to make it dirty, people. Just because I'm here, you don't have to make it dirty. But, yeah. Another character I'm upset we never got, Octopi Planet, which was another DK Vine meme. Not meme, it's pre-meme. Preemie. It was a DK Vine joke. I think that was Ozzy Benz, was Octopi Planet, while Walrus World was probably, I think, was My Baby. Anyway, nobody advocated for Dragon.
Nobody can think of a
Planetoid.
second. Nobody can think of a noun for dragon, can they? I mean,
No.
other than planet, but Dragon Planet. That
Dragon
doesn't sound
Forest.
right.
Oh wait, that's the name of the fourth world. We got to talk about Darkwater Beach first. So Darkwater Beach it's kind of similar to Icicle Pyramid, but in this case you have 8 bananas, and if you get hit, you'll lose a few, and if you lose all of them, you're disqualified, and you're doing this in a hovercraft, by the way.
So exactly like Icicle Pyramid, but you're in the hovercraft.
Yeah,
but
but you can't...
It is on essentially one level. You got like some ramps and some islands to give you a little bit of elevation, but this is sort of like almost like a demolition derby sort of setup to this.
An aquatic demolition derby, which I really want to see now, actually, now that I think about it. Which, the Fawns from off of Happy Days participated in a demolition derby with Pinky Tuscadero. Or was that with Leather Tuscadero? It was with one of the Tuscaderos. And then later, he jumped over a shark with the skis, So...
If only they'd done one more season.
I know, let's combine the two. Let's have him do a demolition derby over a shark. I really think Happy Days was just slacking by the end of it. And it didn't have to be the Fonz. It could have been Ted McGinley. It could have been... I would have liked to see Mr. Cunningham get in on the action, get in some daredevil escapades. And Chachi could have just been eaten by the shark. That would have been fine. Dragon Forest. So this is the Renaissance Fair world. It is it suggests that Timbers Island has some medieval era villages still standing, and this is very much
intermixed with windmills and like very golf coursey looking windmills too.
Yeah, a little bit, but by and large, Dragon Forest is supposed to be kind of old world Europe. It's the most Eurocentric I think Rare got up until this point. Some of DKC3 had a lot of European vibes to it, but I think I think it could also be, but it's Canada, or it's it's just generic Lake Country. Dragon Forest was like the first time Rare was actually playing to their European heritage.
And it's I remember Dragon Forest. I mean, I think about it a bit more as time went on, because when Tropical Freeze happened, the level at which like I just got like a big emotional response out of the game was Autumn Heights, World, I suppose, Autumn Heights, because it seemed like the natural combination of like DKC3 and Diddy Kong Racing and everything that came before, because you had this like sort of Dutch countryside to it.
And maybe that's why Kevin Folgers associates this world with Autumn. Because it just the link between the various games of the Donkey Kong universe that have utilized similar elements. Windmill Plains is the first track, and it is initially a plain track. It's one of those great tracks where you have different you have different strategies with all three vehicles, and there are benefits to using each vehicle. You just have to find which strategy suits you best. And I love that the planes and the hovercrafts can use cart zippers. And if a plane zipper is low enough, a hovercraft can jump through it. I like that you weren't necessarily limited. You just had to find a way to use them. And so here the plane can go underneath the windmills and use cart zippers to get a boost. And so it was really a lot of efficient strategy and racing to like shave seconds off your time, which is really helpful when doing the time trials.
In Windmill Plains, you also have like another one of those raises questions bits of googly-eyed things, kind of like
Yes.
the snowballs and the rocks in Banjo. The animate stacks of hay.
Yeah, the hay mounds have googly eyes, and obviously, Ukulele introduced the concept that googly eyes can attach to anything, and I think we kind of said, okay, if a googly eyes pair attaches itself to an item long enough, it eventually becomes one with it permanently, and then becomes an entirely new entity. So sure, why not? I know somebody on Twitter recently asked Chris Seaver, hey, does the Haybot from Conker's Bad Fur Day, are these mounds of hay in Diddy Kong Racing actually related to the Haybot? And Chris Seaver was not having any of it. He was just like, I think his response was no, with like 17 ellipses afterwards, all lowercase. I don't think Chris Seaver really wants to play in that sandbox. But yeah, anyway, it's weird, and yeah, it raises some disturbing implications. Like, do these unseen farmers use these mounds of hay after they become googly-eyed? And if so, does that eventually kill these mounds, or can these googly-eyed mounds of hay regrow the hay that's lost from them?
I do recall
is it like
one
a
of the
lizard type
memorable
thing?
pages from the fan-produced Diddy Kong Race zine was set in this level, and it was a drawing with the premise that Diddy had flown through one of the animate haystacks and came out the other side covered in blood.
Yeah, I never actually ordered the Diddy Kong Racing fanzine. I have the Banjo-Kazooie one, Cameron, that you took part in, but
Yeah,
yeah,
Can we make a note and I'll credit the artist when I find their name?
we're not gonna remember that. Maybe on some future episode. Greenwood Village, Cameron. So this is kind of infamous as, if not the hardest Diddy Kong Racing track, then definitely the hardest silver coin challenge. So Greenwood Village is a medieval village and part of the exterior forest that you race through.
I just got off the shelf and got the book. It's credited to Joe.
Oh, not Joe Mudd though.
Not Joe Mudd.
Just
Joe Ryan, at BunnyKnot. On
Okay,
Twitter.
well, I'm glad we could actually credit that artist who drew such a ghastly, grisly depiction of the world of Windmill Plains. Thank you, Joe Ryan. Anyway, Greenwood Village. Cameron, do you have anything to elaborate about Greenwood Village? Your personal memories, remembrances, dalliances with this track?
I was gonna say it's the world I associate most with Dragon Forest, but I think no, all of the ones in Dragon Forest are pretty memorable to me, except maybe
They are.
Windmill Plains.
No, I think all four are like all four kind of stand shoulder to shoulder, equally memorable. It's strange because every other world in this game, maybe Future Funland does too, but even Future Funland has like definitely the like two standouts. Dragon Forest, I think, for some reason they all seem to like scratch a different itch just enough that they all kind of stay in the brain.
Yeah, I'd say Greenwood Village I remember for a few things. One, that it's a village. It's an ostensibly populated area in this game, which is always neat to see.
And I always want to call it Greenwich Village.
Yeah. And the well shortcut, of course.
Yes. And I think we would be remiss if we did not bring up that the
Yeah,
Diddy
this
Kong
is the
Racing
other
team,
thing I remember this track for.
So the Diddy Kong Racing team seemed to have some sort of an unhealthy fixation with this track, as it would show up in Jet Force Gemini as an unlockable one in the what was it, the
Jeff and Barry Racing, was that it?
Jeff and Barry Racing, right. So in the context of Jet Force Gemini, it's part of a video game. So for those who say, well, you should count Jet Force Gemini as part of the Donkey Kong universe because because Greenwood Village.
First of all, it's not a physical universe. I can see where people get confused.
But also it's an electronic representation of Greenwood Village in Jet Force Gemini.
It's no more there than Mario is in Donkey Kong 64.
Exactly. So close, very close. But if they really wanted Jet Force Gemini to be part of what we understand as the shared rare universe, they really should have made the lava world that Gobi visited part of Jet Force Gemini. That was just a failure all around. Also, it's found in Mickey Speedway USA, but you have to use a Game Shark, or back in the day you had to use a Game Shark to unlock it. So, I just find that fascinating.
I think it was a test track.
Perhaps. I mean, I could see why they would want to use this as a test track. It had just enough features that, you know, if you want to make sure your engine is running smoothly, your game is running smoothly, that all the features of the game are running smoothly, with a kart-based racer, Greenwood Village is a good track to use. Obviously, Mickey Speedway USA, developed by Diddy Kong Racing team members, but far less memorable because it was more of a shameless cash-in due to a contract Nintendo signed with Disney that Rare got kind of snookered into, or at the very least Rare team members got snookered into. I don't really know if the Stampers had any primary objections to it. But anyway, the forgotten Rare games of this era, like, hell, they were forgotten when they came out. It was just kind of afterthoughts, especially when Rare could no longer feature the games on their website because Disney wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, I remember the Uncle Tusk letter specifically about that.
Yeah. So it
Where
was
they just
like,
kind of
oh,
had
okay.
to allude, there's a very good reason it's not on here anymore.
Yes, because if Disney cannot own it, they don't want to partake in it. Which I'm amazed Disney has not made a play for Nintendo at this point. Like, why not? You're going after 20th Century Fox, for Christ's sake.
You need to go after 20th Century Fox McCloud.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
We can make that joke because it came before Diddy Kong Racing, you see?
I got it. And I'll allow it. I'm the guy who said Bluey CK earlier, so I'll allow that one. Boulder Canyon. Yeah. Yeah, TT's voice, like, alternates between just, like, this high-pitched, like, falsetto and kind of like a newsboy. I don't really know. So, Boulder Canyon, this is your favorite hovercraft stage, right?
It's certainly the one I remember the most, and that's for a few reasons that don't actually have much to do with the like straight layout of the track. One is the interactive drawbridge.
Yeah.
Which
the bell. Ring
fun
the bell.
if you're the one raising it, and not so much anyone else.
Yeah, so if you jump up and hit this bell, the drawbridge races, which, by the way, is also how you get the key for this world.
Really clever way to hide the key.
This is such a well-hidden key, and I don't even remember how I found this, if I eventually just, like, because I had the player's guide for this game, just because by this point I was buying the player's guides for the artwork, and for all, like, the vast quantity of renders that you would only see in these player's guides pre-internet, and hell, I mean, even after the internet, this is still the only place to find a lot of these renders. And I probably found out about the key just by like glancing through the pages. It wasn't like an intentional, I want to find out where this key is. It was just like,
I can't even remember how I found it. I can't remember if I used a guide or if it was just one of those try absolutely everything kind of moments.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, basically to get the key, you have to raise the drawbridge when you're on the other side of it, obviously, and then drive back up the drawbridge as it's raising, and then it's going to be in an alcove in the interior of the castle. Pretty damn cool.
The other thing I remember this for is the dynamic music.
Yeah. Yes. So this is basically whitewater rapids through a medieval castle, and then you can go down into like the sewer of the castle, and then you're gonna exit through the rapids, and then you're out like in the nature, back in the woodlands, and then there's all these logs that are floating that you can like hop over or avoid, and then there's dynamic music changing during the course of the track.
This is pre Banjo-Kazooie dynamic music as well.
Yeah, Banjo-Kazooie is obviously the rare game that really like made its mark, made it famous. Everybody remembers Treasure Trove Cove, scaling it, and how the music would shift or going underwater and the music becomes muffled. But yeah, Boulder Canyon. All right. Haunted Woods, the last normal track of the world, and the last normal track in the last normal world. This is kind of a cheat. It's not really haunted. All that's happening is Wizpig is projecting his head in ghostly form out in the woods, and I always just pictured Wizpig standing in front of like a video camera, like making like stupid faces.
It is like a really weird approach to ghosts when you think about it for more than a couple seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly just Wizpig like screwing with the racers, maybe like playing off the legends that these woods are haunted, but you never actually see any real ghosts, which is kind of cool.
He's a genie. This is like a rare glimpse of like him doing some magic, maybe out.
Yeah,
like really hokey magic, but
trickster magic. He's getting his inner Loki. His not, and what's his name? Not Benedict Cumberbatch. Not
Tom Hiddleston.
Tom Hiddleston. I was like, not Benedict Cumberbatch. Not Bumblestick Fumbleduck or whatever Big Lips McGee is named. But Tom Hiddleston. Thank you. The third British guy who's pasty and a sex symbol. Haunted Woods.
This is one of my favorite tracks, and I think it's mostly due to the music and just it not really. I'd say not have it. It has a little bit of the atmosphere of the rest of the game, but it deviates as much as I think you reasonably could and still have this as a premise of a level.
Yeah, the music is really. This is what David Wise's music would sound like if he composed "Grab by the Ghoulies," because it's like that kind of kid-friendly but still slightly creepy, kind of kooky Halloween music.
It's very grim grinning ghosts, kind of.
Right. Yeah. It's. Grant Kirkhope. I think still the most amazing feat of Grant Kirkhope's career was having to do the music for Grab by the Ghoulies, having to do basically haunted house music and make it varied in each room, in each environment, and I still don't know how he pulled it off.
After he had already done Mad Monster Mansion.
Yeah.
We want you to do this exact same kind of music, but for an entire game, and it can't sound like what you already did.
So this is just a small taste, a thin mint, if you will, of what David Wise's Grab by the Ghoulies would have sounded like. It's also for whatever reason, it's memorable for me because at the beginning in the village part of Haunted Woods, when you've got the fountain, there's that part where you can go to there's a fork around the fountain, and you can go right or left, and there's no advantage to it other than what kind of balloon you want to use.
Wasn't that also like the justification for having the hovercraft be part of that level? I say level even though they're all like tracks, but...
Well, the cart is the basic one, but yeah, I guess with the hovercraft you can just drive right over the fountain too and cut through it, which I guess maybe shaves some time off. I've never really tested it out, but...
Probably not. It probably just takes you longer to dip in and dip out.
Yeah, I've always been terrible about like finding the shortest amount of time on a track, be it Mario Kart or Diddy Kong Racing or Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing with Banjo-Kazooie. I will learn like what the fast route is, but as far as like sussing it out for myself, my instincts are always wrong, and I usually will pick a longer route and think, oh, this is faster, and being terribly, terribly wrong. So Smokey the Dragon, it's weird for me because my cat of 16 years was named Smokey, so whenever I say Smokey, I always think of my cat and not the dragon. Smokey was a rescue. Well, I don't even think about the bear anymore. Smokey, my cat, was a rescue. Her name was Smokey when I got her, and so I didn't want to change it. But I retroactively justified it as, I named her after the Diddy Kong Racing Dragon. So, because it was spelled the same way. So, yay for me. Because my cat before Smokey was named Diddy, so I just wanted to keep it going. If I ever get another cat, I will try to name it after another Donkey Kong Universe character.
Even more, you need to just go increasingly deep down the obscurity well.
Puddles, the cat from Banjo-Tooie, from off of Banjo-Tooie, and then there's Piddles, the cat from off of Nuts and Bolts. Smokey the Dragon. You race him through a windmill plains type environment in that there are windmills and it's a similar landscape. But here, what Smokey does is he breathes fire and these flames hover in the air. So he's got his own unique kind of dropper. Not one that's actually found in normal gameplay. And, I don't know. I don't really have anything to say about Smokey other than he's got a scary voice. He sounds like a freaking demon.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add about this character? Who sounds so evil, but then he's like such a nice guy after you talk with him?
The thing with Smokey is I think I remember him distinctly. He was in a lot of the artwork renders, and they would almost always depict him like looking like much more of a monster. Yeah. Or a mischief maker.
Yeah, I was definitely hesitant to face Smokey because I saw so many renders of him that just made him look like such a badass, and same thing with Bubbler. I was just like, oh, this guy freaks me out. But
no, you meet him and he's like standing straight up with his arms up like a meerkat, and it's just this is a very approachable, hypnotized, fire-breathing monster.
Yeah, he sounds like Lucifer, like with a sore throat, but he's a pretty swell guy. Pretty nice dragon. Anyway, Smokey, I found him less difficult than Bubbler, but I think that's just me being more comfortable with the plane versus the hovercraft. Hard to say.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So, speaking of Smokey, we said only WizPig had any tracks really themed after him, but we were wrong. There is a challenge level that is themed after a character, and that character is Smokey. Smokey Castle. Smokey has his own abandoned castle, or I guess it's not abandoned if he's living in it, but I don't know if this was originally his castle or if he just took it over after whatever medieval like noblemen and women lived here like died out.
Maybe it's not even his. It's just like, I don't know, maybe they cook a lot in there or something.
They had a really like horrible smoking habit, like when tobacco was brought over from the New World.
So that explains Smokey's voice.
Yeah. They just like lit up, and it smells like that one relative you occasionally visited that like they always smoked inside, and the whole place just reeked. Is that just me? Okay. So, Smoky Castle, a little bit different mechanics here. So, basically, you're hoarding bananas in a treasure chest. And you have to get 10 bananas in your chest to win. And so, basically...
And you can only hold 2 at a time.
Yes, you can only hold 2 at a time. So, you've got to basically collect them, get them back to the treasure chest, and, hope you don't get attacked along the way.
Yeah, because, again, recurring theme in this game, you get hit, you lose 2 bananas.
Yes. This is probably my second favorite out of the 4. I like the hoarding. I like any challenge level in this game where you have to hoard.
I mean, I like that thematically it's a hoarding game named after a dragon. But,
and you're also hoarding bananas, which Diddy is quite familiar with due to his relationship with Donkey Kong.
But honestly, this one was always kind of the least fun for me, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, fine. I won't ever play this with you, Cameron, because Diddy Kong Racing will never be available for online play, so I will never play any Diddy Kong Racing with you. So take that. So anyway, you unlock Whizpig. You unlock the first Whizpig race, and what happens is the Whizpig Mountain, throughout the course of the game, quadrants of it start to become fleshy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what is your take on what this mountain's makeup is throughout all of this? Like, is it just colored rock, or no, is it like this weird flesh golem hybrid?
It is essentially synthetic flesh. And I say synthetic, it is essentially real flesh, but magically made. It's more realistic than a fleshlight, but it's somehow even more foul and disgusting. It's basically artificial Whizpig flesh made manifest on this mountain. Thank God it goes away.
Mind you.
Yes, thank God it goes away when Whizpig is defeated, and it's replaced with a gold Taj head, because God. And then you have to fly into its mouth. Like, what the hell? So you fly into its mouth, and then you have access to the mountainside that you can't really fly up over on the overworld. And this is the mountain that Whizpig took over and claimed as his kind of makeshift headquarters on Timbers Island, his mountain fortress, where Pipsy and some of the other animals lived that were then evicted from their homes. And you can actually see the homes when you're racing Whizpig.
Yeah, this is the closest you get to like seeing Whizpig's path of destruction play out in game.
You don't even see any destroyed homes, but it's,
it's implicated, I think, by like the flooding.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. So this is a kart race, but you're racing Whizpig. He's on foot, and it's kind of a flooded track, so you have to evade the puddles, not the cat, but actual pools of water on the track. This is quite difficult, I have to say. It's no easy.
Yeah, first time out, this will give you trouble.
Cartwalk?
I mean, Whizpig is giant. He does like every other boss, I believe, and tries to get a head start. And because of his size, he can also he doesn't just bash you around, he can squash your character underfoot.
Yeah, and is this the first implementation of like cartoony physics where I know Donkey Kong 64 really utilized them, but the whole like flatten like a pancake thing. Is this the first time we ever see that like utilized in the Donkey Kong universe? Well, I guess Mario Kart 64 did it, but as far as like a rare game goes,
I think so. At least like, yeah. You've had like little cartoon physics things before, like Diddy and Dixie's eyes bugging out in DKC 2, but I don't think you ever
or
had
Donkey's eyes bugging out when he's on the ledge in the original DKC.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I don't think the flattened to a pancake thing ever really happened before this game.
Somebody on the DK forum, forgive me for not remembering whom, but asked how do you explain cartoon physics like this? And I remember saying they have a lot of broken bones, but thankfully they have good health care. Like I really do like foresee them like getting just smooshed and suffering lots of internal contusions as a result.
They just all have like collapsible skeletons.
And magic. Who's to say? Maybe Taj just fixed them all. He healed them all.
He's
so
just watching off screen, like waving his finger when he sees that they've just been mangled horribly.
When are we gonna get universal Taj care? I will not accept anything less. So, you beat Wizpig, and he's just like, shit, you beat me. You bested me. Alright, you rascals. You got me. I'm a man of honor. I'm gonna go away now. Bye-bye. Or at least that's the impression you have. And so the characters feel confident enough that they have a party. They have a beachside party. They have a banner that says party, so you know it's a party. What party isn't a good party if you don't have a sign that says party?
It's
not
just
a good
occurring
party,
to me
that's
now.
for sure.
This is the first of, I guess, 3 if you count Banjo-Tooie, N64 rare games to contain a premature victory party.
Yeah, Banjo must be fucking sick of that. And to be fair, this is the best party Conker's ever attended, because his parties usually involve child abductions or fascist teddy bears completely derailing it. Conker's parties never really go to plan either. But at the very least, his parties are mildly interrupted before he can resume them. So, yeah, they have a beachside party, and it's la 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 la, and then the music kind of gets sinister, kind of gets a little spooky, because Wizpig, he's hiding behind the lighthouse. He's perving on them like Bumper. He's going tee hee hee. I'm a shifty bastard. I don't give a shit that I was beaten fair and square. I'm gonna wreck the place up. And here's my spaceship. It's on autopilot. Let's start blasting the shit out of these woodland animals. Yeah, I'm a badass. And then the beam comes down. He's like, beam me up, shippy. And then he goes up into his own ship. And then he goes through that wormhole back to his home planet. He poochies himself out of Diddy Kong Racing. And quite honestly, I don't even know why the characters just didn't let it go there. They were like, okay,
yeah,
bye, Wizpig.
From this point on, they're just out for blood and revenge.
Yeah. At this point, like, you'd think like Diddy after
maybe it's like a preventative measure to keep him from doing this to anybody else, but
yeah, I can see like Taj and Timber being like, no, he could come back at any time. That wormhole is still open up there. We've got to finish this. But I don't know why Diddy, especially Diddy and Crunch, could have like spoken up and said like, look, a couple years ago I rescued Donkey Kong from the Kremlins, and I should have just ended it right there. I should have just let it lie right there. But I was out for blood, and I accidentally caused a genocide of the Kremlin race. Sorry, Crunch, my bad. Maybe we shouldn't go to Wizpig's planet. That could be some bad news. It could be some bad news bears if Banjo's involved. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. And it was fine. They didn't blow up Wizpig's planet or anything heinous like that. But it turns out Wizpig, maybe it was Wizpig, the mechanics of this were never properly explained, but turns out the lighthouse had a rocket ship in it this whole time. And so if they got all 4 Wizpig trophies, this activated the failsafe rocket in the lighthouse. So then they could all load into the rocket, and then TT played mission control, and the rocket blasted off through the wormhole to Wizpig's home planet in unspecified solar system. So,
I like to think when they got back, there were just like untold amounts of ships crashed into the shoreline.
yeah, because the lighthouse is gone. The lighthouse is gone. Maybe this is what happened to all those ships in Pirate Lagoon. Maybe like the lighthouse had been made into a spacecraft long before the events of Diddy Kong Racing. But it should be pointed out that the lighthouse is gone at this point. It's permanently docked on Wizpig's planet. To get back to Future Funland, you just have to drive over the base of where the lighthouse used to be, and you're just going to teleport up to Future Funland. So that's convenient. So Future Funland, it's a bit of a misnomer because it is Wizpig's home planet. It is not the future. It takes place in the present.
Futuristic Funland.
Yeah, futuristic in comparison to Earth technology.
Or like
that's what they should have called
it. I guess it's kind of like going with the theme park theme again, like Tomorrowland. It's.
I guess. Yeah. Well, you're exactly right there. But they really should have called it Futuristic Funland, but not really the future. It just has futuristic technology, but it's actually on another planet. But it takes place in the present. The present being 1997 when this game came out. That's what I would have called it. But unfortunately, I was a little kid, and Rare wasn't listening to my insane ramblings back then. Not that they listen to my insane ramblings now, but they're aware of it because I tweeted at them. So let's talk about Future Funland. Space Dust Alley, which sounds like a David Bowie character, but alas, it is just the first track of Diddy Kong Racing's Future Funland. It's Lost World, if you will, and this is one that is this a I always forget because is this a plane-based track or is it a kart-based track
plane.
At first? Plane, okay, because I have probably driven on this with the kart just as much as I have with the plane. I'm not sure why, but I have.
I think it is one of the few tracks that defaults to the plane but lets you use the car.
Okay, so this is really cool because you've got the really like sci-fi. It's almost like a prehistoric track in the landscape. It looks like it could be something from Dino Domain because it's got the palm trees and kind of the arid grounds, but then it's got the just completely sci-fi, spacey skyline.
It's all in the color scheme. It's
yes.
Like Future Funland in general has this. Like it's a very visually striking part of the game.
Yeah, you got the blues and purples and pinks really utilized in like just striking vibrancy. And Space Dust Alley is notable in that there are like electrical beams being shot out, like laser beams. There's also a spaceship that fires on you. I guess this is Wizpig's like Air Force or like Space Force.
It was maybe like a drone fizz, but
I always pictured like
definitely like a minion kind of thing.
Yeah, I always pictured like the residents of Wizpig's planet being like smaller versions of Wizpig. Like this is a porcine alien species.
I was never even confident other people even lived on this planet. Like, he just kept these cities around and didn't do anything with them because they were his to have.
I no, because we know like the monorail is still going and in Star City, so I like to think this is still like an active alien planet, but Wizpig is just the despot. He used his magical genie powers for evil in comparison to Taj, who used his genie powers for friendship. So, I don't know, yeah, and I like our theory that maybe Pipsy took over Future Funland after Wizpig's presumed death.
That's hardwired in his headcanon now.
So, yeah, but I always like Wizpig's forces will fire upon you in this world. Like, they are not happy you're invading his planet. And Space Dust Alley also has like floating like asteroids or something, which never really made a lot of sense considering you're on the planet, but whatever, I'll allow it.
Yeah, gravity just does whatever it feels like.
Well, also this is the home planet of an alien space pig genie, so he can do whatever he wants because it's magic. Literally, a wizard did it. A Wizpig did it. That is the explanation.
Yeah, nice interplay of magic and tech here.
Yeah. Dark Moon Caverns. So this is a weird one in that it's forgettable, and yet it's one I cherish. I love Dark Moon Caverns, and yet it's the one I'm most likely to forget about when thinking about Future Funland. But then I think about it, I'm like, Dark Moon Caverns is one of the best. It's a car track that you can also use the hovercraft on, but it's mostly famous for its two loops. It's two loop-de-loops that are built into the track.
This one I also remember, again, as for the music.
Yeah. And also more spaceships. More of Wizpig's Air Force will fire upon you. In the loop-de-loops, like, that's when you'll see the ships. So it's a nice thrill ride through and through. And I love the lighting in the tunnels. It's not like the level of absurdity of Donkey Kong 64's tunnel lighting. It's many, many, many lit tunnels. But it's a nice preview of that dynamic lighting. And, yeah, I don't know. Dark Moon Caverns also kind of reminds me of Star Fox Adventures just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Because they would utilize some of the aesthetics
Moon Mountain Pass, right?
Yes, exactly. Where the Sharp Claws were born. So, yeah, it just feels very similar. It makes you wonder if Wizpig's planet is anywhere near the Lilat system, which I doubt it. That's not in my personal headcanon. But, you know, you got Pigma, you know, in Star Wolf, so Wizpig is another gross pig space monster.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you start to make everything connected, it gets a little bit much. It's okay to connect one A to B, but if you also connect A to B, C, D, and E at the same time,
right? The whole universe starts to feel pathetically small, and Star Wars has that problem,
right?
Especially
Exactly,
back in the
where you have R2D2 and 3PO were somehow around at every major thing ever.
Which would be fine if it was portrayed a little bit differently. Because George Lucas's inspiration there was based on, I think, Seven Samurai, and like the Observer characters in that. But then actually having Darth Vader build C-3PO when he was a little kid, it sucked. So speaking of Star Wars, Cameron, speaking of Star Wars, Spaceport Alpha. So one element of Spaceport Alpha I did not realize is Spaceport until you made the Diddy Kong Racing 15th anniversary site design was that Spaceport Alpha is visible from Star City. I always thought Spaceport Alpha was like a floating like satellite base or something, but no, it's actually in a Jetsons type building just off Star City.
Yeah, and it's weird that you don't even really remember the level for that. I remember it probably for the same reason you do. It has the Star Wars trench run built into it.
The Darth Star Trench, Angry Orchard for when you want to derail your podcast. That's some shitty podcast. Yeah, the Death Star Trench Run. And you have to remember, 1997 saw the re-release of the Star Wars trilogy as the now maligned Star Wars Special Edition, but the Star Wars Special Edition, that really did introduce Star Wars to a whole another generation, and I was part of that generation. Like, Star Wars had been this kind of thing that kind of existed when I was a kid. It was on VHS, but it always felt like it belonged to another generation, and then I had no, like, claim to it until the Special Edition came out, and then I felt like I could get on sort of this new ground floor of Star Wars. So I was, like, a Star Wars nerd at this point in 97. So to have my two favorite things in late 97, the Donkey Kong universe, have such a blatant homage to Star Wars, I loved it. It was great. It was great to do the Death Star Trench Run as Diddy Kong. It's like just ticking off so many boxes in my young head. I loved it. But by and large, this is just a fun plane track, and you can actually take the car and the hovercraft on here as well, if I'm not mistaken. But why would you? Because this trench run, you don't want to take a land speeder to the Death Star. That's just absurd. Okay, Star City, Cameron. Now you have a lot of intimate familiarity with Star City.
I've spent a lot more time in Star City than one person ever reasonably should.
Tell me about Star City, Cameron.
It is a city, and again, we're getting into the theme park things. Like, this is one of the tracks that just is like straight up pulling from Disneyland / Disney World, because you have a spaceship Earth, in fact, like a sort of knockoff of it as a central part of the level. You have the monorail,
the Geodome, I always called it a golf ball when I was a kid, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's called Spaceship Earth.
Okay. From Epcot, right?
Mamechi will write into me later if I don't get
Mamechi
that right.
will destroy you. I once called
it a golf ball, and he got very livid with me.
To be fair, we're the people who thought that Donkey Kong Jungle Beat was Donkey Kong Golf. We see golf everywhere. We cannot help it. Star City is fantastic. It is a magical taste of WizPig's planet that isn't overtly militaristic. It kind of gives you a sense of how the other half lives on WizPig's planet. What a metropolis on WizPig's unnamed planet, which I hate that it doesn't actually have a name, that we can only call it by Future Funland, which is really just the terminology used by the Diddy Kong racers for these very specific tracks on WizPig's planet. And to be fair, WizPig is enough of a narcissist that I could see him just renaming this place WizPig's Planet, yeah, it's cool to be kind of just part of like the street level of this planet, and you've got lots of like cool neon signs here.
There's a lot of like little neat things in this track. There's the neon lights. There's the rotating ring fountain that would later be seen in Jet Force Gemini.
Which is actually, I believe, an homage to the Christopher Reeve Superman movie. It's what the General Zod was being kept in when he was on trial, when Jor-El had him on trial before sentencing him to the Phantom Zone. So yeah, you had that. You had like the neon rare sign, which. And
you've got the building with KI emblazoned on the side, which I like the headcanon that Ultra Tech has its claws in this planet somehow.
I think Nintendo Power even offered that headcanon. So, as much as we rag on that rag, Nintendo Power, they definitely helped stoke some of this in our imaginations back in the day. Star City is probably the most iconic Diddy Kong Racing track, and I would say that even if we did not have a site design based on it back in the 50th anniversary, it was our first anniversary site design, so much so that we did not do a 20th anniversary Diddy Kong Racing site design because we already did a 15th anniversary because we could not wait. You guys were so impatient to do it. We're like, we're not going to be here in 5 years. And yet, Cameron, here you are. You're still here.
Yeah, I didn't know when I first did that I would keep doing it for a bunch of other subsequent games. It just seemed like... I think my motivation at the core of it was I wanted to do an alternate skin for the forum, and Diddy Kong Racing having neon as its aesthetic was a good reason to do it.
Right, back when we were still on a neon high. I mean, we still have the neon heads, it's just... we're not all about the neon anymore. So, let's talk about the lack of a challenge level in Future Funland. There is some indication that they had planned for one, but they cut it because of time. I'm not sure what purpose the challenge level would have served, because there's no TT amulet.
TT amulet's not 5 parts.
Right. But, it's interesting. It kind of makes this... And honestly, it doesn't really matter because it makes Future Funland feel more special by having less, if that makes any sense. I realize that sounds like some sort of really hokey justification, but...
Well, the entire level is supposed to be sort of a surprise for the player to begin with, so it's...
Exactly.
It sort of is like a less subtle Lost World.
I mean, they do hint at its existence during the course of the actual game. Like I said, you can see the planet above the second world, but it's only if you're really paying attention and you're like, hey, are we going to go into space later in this game? Like, what's going on here? What are you suggesting, Diddy Kong Racing? So, the final WizPig race, the rematch. The rematch of all rematches, where WizPig is riding a fucking rocket. I love the overkill here. So he's not on foot anymore. He is just blasting off on a rocket, and you're racing him around his, I guess, throne, around his...
I like how he greets you with, well, looky here, it's the little worm, as if he wasn't expecting you to be there. Riding around on this chrome rocket is just what he does for fun.
I also love how he greets himself as if he were the Kool-Aid Man. He bursts out of a wall on the rocket, just like, oh yeah! But no, he says, well, looky here, it's the little worm. And he does this, like, very, almost, like, aggressive pelvis shake, like he were Elvis from off of Elvis Presley. Okay, WizPig, you weirdo. And so you're racing him around what is essentially his throne. You've got more of his Air Force blasting you along the way. You've got another carved WizPig head in the side of a mountain, which suggests to me that he does this on every world he takes over or attempts to take over. He's got to have a WizPig head near his lair, near his base of operations. And you've got his golden throne, which is... I like the little detail that it's protected by an electrified shield. So
like a
you
force
can-
field. So you gotta
Yeah,
go
yeah,
around
you-
it, and it's all the while lasers are shooting everywhere around it.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Like-
of course Wizpig would like this.
And you really get the impression that he does not want you to be here. And also the sky, there's some sort of like ionic storm or something happening in the sky. Or I don't know if it's just Wizpig like putting on some sort of apocalyptic light show for
Yeah,
you.
The weather just doesn't react well with Wizpig around, does it? Or maybe
no.
that's him doing it.
Yeah, but whatever the case may be, it really creates this foreboding finality to this race. And it's hard. I mean, it's a challenge. You've got to basically run a perfect race. You can't slip up. You might have some allowance to slip up a little bit once, but you have to immediately rebound and then just keep at it.
I hit the retry button on this one a lot.
Yeah.
Better I
yeah,
got at it, I was able to not rely on that, but I definitely saw like the little glimpse of my character flying past that rock wall before I skipped the cutscene a bunch of times. Because every time you retry, it tries to load the cutscene again.
Right. I just remember the feeling of Wizpig bearing down at you, like you were ahead, but then you saw like the tip of the missile like poking through on the side of the screen, and you're like, nah! Like you must go fast. Like you were Jeff Goldbluming, going, you must go faster, 1997 saw Independence Day, right? Or was that 96? Nah, it's 97. Or was it 96? I don't even remember. Yeah, whatever. Independence Day, it was the late 90s, whatever. So anyway,
you know
yeah.
How Jeff Goldblum acts in a movie.
One of the many highlights of Thor Ragnarok. I just love how they're just like, all right, let's just film Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. We're not even gonna write a part for him. We'll just see what he does. So you beat Wizpig, you run a basically flawless race, and you beat Wizpig, and his missile starts shorting out. And I just love how, like, just by sheer coincidence, or maybe him running his missile so hard, like, it's not actually made for racing, he's just, like, really, like, ramping up the insanity at this point. And he causes his missile to short circuit, and it blasts off. Why he doesn't just jump off the missile, I don't know. But it blasts off into space, and he ends up like going to a neighboring planet, I think, or maybe it's supposed to be the moon.
There had to be the implication of some violent demise, or what, you just went to his planet to show him up. And that was it. You just did a victory lap around his racing ability.
You basically have to give the characters the impression that Wizpig is dead, or else it's going to get really awkward. Like, you beat Wizpig, and then what? Does Banjo then, like, pull out a Bowie knife and try to slit his throat? Like, what is the end game here, Diddy Kong Racers? What are you trying to accomplish? Like, are you gonna like tell Wizpig now you have to leave your planet? No, like so either this ends in a grisly, unnecessary murder, or Wizpig comically meets his end through his own doing. Again, accidental murder is always Diddy Kong's MO. So Wizpig, blasts off to this other planet, enters the atmosphere of it, and the missile blows up. Boom! And you are left with the impression Wizpig is dead. And Rare loved doing this back in this era. Like, K. Rool getting eaten by the sharks. If you, like, the very, very beginning of Donkey Kong Country 2's true ending with Crocodile Isle blowing up, you think, oh, K. Rool's dead. The end of Donkey Kong Land 2 where K. Rool does not escape, and you're like, oh, K. Rool's dead. So, yeah, Wizpig blows up. Wizpig is dead. So you go back to Timbers Island. Now the Wizpig Mountain is completely gone, and it's Taj's golden head on the mountainside. Again, how does Timber's family react to coming home. Hi, Timber. How did things go? Why is there an elephant head on our mountainside? What did you do? Like, I can understand Timber, like, not wanting them to know Wizpig had invaded the island. He's gonna have to tell them. Like, oh yeah, you remember Taj the Genie? He used to own this island. He's been gone for 50 years. Well, he's back. But don't worry, he's cool with your leadership. He does have his face on the side of the mountain now. Long story. How's Donkey Kong Island?
Tricky, Bubbler, Bluey, and Smokey can fill you in on everything.
Yeah. Yeah, they're no longer brainwashed. I mean, so there's a big party in Taj's Meadow. Everybody's there, sans Bubbler, who's probably off near Sherbert Island, just waiting for the party to get back down to the beach. This is where you see, like, Crunch doing the conga line with other characters like Banjo and I think Taj, Tip Top Bumper, I want to say. And you're like, oh, Crunch is fully friends with these characters now. He's no longer here as a spy. He's celebrating with the rest of them. He got swept up in the adventure. He is glad Wizpig is the charred bits raining down on some alien planet. Everybody's happy.
And his boss has less competition now.
Yeah, exactly. We never have to see K. Rool or Chaos ever worrying about what Wizpig is up to, because Wizpig is dead. And you've got the boss character celebrating too, to show that the brainwashing has been lifted. We've got various characters like riding on the back. It doesn't Timber ride on the back of Smokey, and Pipsy's riding on the back of Tricky, and you see Tricky's family, Taxing and Troublesome, which I think we've fan-wanked that it's his wife and daughter.
I thought
but
it was
I'm not
just
sure.
his two kids, because they're both smaller than he is, much smaller.
The one is slightly bigger, so I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're his kids, yeah. But it's not. Oh, Tricky got married and had children at some point. Oh, that's sweet. And so the Tricky lineage continues after his parents were slaughtered by giant bugs in Star Fox Assault. Off screen, of course, only implied. And Bluey's there at the entrance to the snow wing of the overworld. And I think he's standing next to TT, who's like, yeah. So everybody's happy. Everybody's having a good time. Mission accomplished. Everybody's friends. Best friends forever of ever. And then you cut, and the Wizpig spaceship is coming back down to Earth, and he's laughing. And then fade to black. So yeah, that's the.
So yeah,
obviously,
I guess that was just a flyby then.
Well, my interpretation, which became DK Vine's interpretation, was that Wizpig was hiding on Timber's Island, trying to concoct some insane revenge scheme that would bring everyone to their knees and bring the Earth under his control. And he spent years devising this, like hiding somewhere on Timber's. I don't even know where he could be hiding, but he's hiding somewhere on there. And so if you take Diddy Kong Racing DS to be a true like follow-up to Diddy Kong Racing, then Wizpig's decade of plotting resulted in him just doing the exact same thing as before, which seems appropriate in a weird way. But this isn't about Diddy Kong Racing DS, but we'll save that for a future spotlight. Now, there is a second adventure, but do you want to talk about cheats real quick, Cameron?
Yeah, this game has quite a few cheats, and they're at the very least memorable for the humorous names they all have.
Yeah, so I mean, the one I always remember is if you type in Arnold in the what are the cheats actually called? Like wish codes?
I think so.
Magic wishes, something like that. Anyway, basically the implication is Taj is granting you these wishes. So there is actually some sort of in-game justification, but you type in Arnold and the characters get bigger because it's a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger. You get it? Also, you can also play 2-player co-op mode, which is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I can.
Did you ever give the co-op mode a try, Cameron?
I did, but I didn't have anybody willing to really play through the entire adventure mode of Diddy Kong Racing together. So
see, the problem is like I played Diddy Kong Racing with Elliot, but we just did the thing where we switched the controller on and off, off and on, and so
and that's
by the time
what this was.
Yeah, and so when you unlock co-op mode, it's like, well, we've already beaten the game. Why are we going to do it? No. And there's no point.
Yeah, I like that the cheat for that was joint venture. I think my do you have favorite cheat names? I think one of mine is who did this for the credits. Blabbermouth was a cheat I used a fair bit because instead of the horn sound, it'll cycle through all the characters' sound effects. And it's just...
easy way to rip them.
Exactly. Funny to just... Well, it would be if not for the fact that you've got engine noise.
True.
But it's funny to just drive around as Banjo and hear him make all of his expressions of pain.
his redneck cries of anguish. His hillbilly elegies. Wait a second. Joint venture. Shouldn't that be the code to unlock Funky Kong in Mario Kart Wii? Adventure 2. So, if you're going to have a literal reading of the events of Diddy Kong Racing, WizPig came back down to Earth and literally did the same thing over again, but he reversed the racetracks. So what Adventure 2 is, it's you have to go to a different save file. So this is one of the few times I had to do a File 3 save file. But I did that right beneath File 2. And so basically the racetracks are reversed. This is just mirror mode. But the silver coins are in different locations. And also, interestingly enough, the balloons are now made of silver plasma or something. I'm not really sure what the balloons are supposed to be. The golden
disco
balloons.
Ball textured.
Yeah. I always refer to them as silver plasma as a kid, which I don't know where I pulled that out of. I probably saw it on something but yeah, they're like some sort of other type of magical balloons, but they serve the same function. But yeah, if you have a literal reading of the events of this game, it's literally WizPig comes back down to Earth, reverses all the racetracks, and be like, let's do it again, biatches! And then you beat him. His missile short circuits again. He blows up, and then everybody's so incredulous about this that they're like, "Oh, he's really dead this time. Let's have another party."
Four parties in.
And then WizPig comes back down to Earth, but this time he waits a decade before he pulls this shit again, when they're least suspecting it.
I'm thinking this is just treating it as... This is just a reunion special for them at this point. It's like something they do every once in a while.
It's kind of like the Gulf War a little bit. We went there, and then 10 years later, we went back. We were like, Saddam has come back in his spaceship. Let's go get him. To be continued, Cameron? I don't really
I would love for it to be continued. I don't know if that day is ever going to come.
All right, well, we do have several calls to take. People wanted to call in and share their thoughts and feelings, their most intimate desires concerning Diddy Kong Racing. So we'll take these, and then we'll get into our thoughts, our final thoughts about Diddy Kong Racing and its overall impact on the gaming industry.
Hi, Hyle, and guest host. This is Rob Butler, and I had something I wanted to say about Diddy Kong Racing. You guys always say how Banjo-Kazooie and Conquer are spin-offs of Diddy Kong Racing, and I guess that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I was thinking about it. I think, wouldn't it be more correct to say that you treat them as spin-offs for the purposes of your character-driven site? Because those series aren't really spin-offs of Diddy Kong Racing. Those games are in development, I think before Diddy Kong Racing even started being made, right? 'Cause wasn't that a pretty quick development window? Anyway, saying Conquer is a spin-off of Diddy Kong Racing is like saying Ukulele is a spin-off of Tracky Train.
But Ukulele is a spin-off of Tracky Train. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Technically, you're right. Of course, you're right. But, they're kind of retroactive spin-offs, even though that retroactive continuity is applied before the game even came out, if that makes any sense. If one were ignorant of the development history of Banjo and Conquer and Diddy Kong Racing, then you would basically be left with the impression they're spin-offs. It's a common practice, as I said, in sitcoms to have a backdoor pilot, not just spin-offs, but also like procedural dramas, to have a backdoor spin-off where you've already developed the concept for this show, but to get a bigger audience, you introduce the characters first on the mothership. So I know like that's how they do like all the NCIS spin-offs. I'm not like 85, so I don't watch CBS primetime, but they introduce like the characters of like NCIS like New Orleans in like a two-parter, near the end of a season of the regular NCIS, and then the next season the NCIS New Orleans premieres with these characters. But even though NCIS New Orleans was always planned and always conceived, even though it had no conceptions or no connections to NCIS besides the name, it was shoehorned into this continuity. And Banjo and Conquer were shoehorned into this continuity. But where it differs, I think, is where, at the very least, the Banjo team definitely embraced that connection. And so you definitely had lots of references to Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong and Diddy Kong Racing even. Conker's Pocket Tales did it to an extent. They had armies in the game. When it became Bad Fur Day, though, when Conker's Quest became 12 Tales and then 12 Tales became Conker's Bad Fur Day, you definitely saw it less there. I think Chris Seaver is, like I said, is more loath to play in the shared universe sandbox. But it doesn't change that Conker was first introduced in Diddy Kong Racing. So, and anyway, at any rate, Rare is definitely on board with our interpretation of events 20 years later. And so they kind of celebrate and acknowledge that both Banjo and Conker were first seen in Diddy Kong Racing. So, yeah, the original intent wasn't that they were spin-offs, but they became spin-offs all the same. Still a great point. Thanks for the call.
Hello, DK Vine presents Baz Luhrmann's William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, The Kongversation. This is a long-time member of the forums, and even longer-time member of writing in on the letters section of DK Vine. I'm also tangentially related to the inner circle by way of someone within the inner circle and knowing them as a child. This inner circle person is my Elliot, or am I her Elliot? Diddy Kong Racing is easily the greatest game of all time, as it emerges the racing genre with the action-adventure genre and combines it with the best lead characters and the best supporting characters, who will of course go on to their own game franchises, obviously, as this game truly is the backbone to DK Vine and my childhood. As a 90s kid, I took a piece of paper and a Funko Land brochure and cut out the not final box art of the game I wanted most and created a money envelope Most of the games were Donkey Kong Universe or rare games like Jet Force Gemini and Perfect Dark. I remember the promotional box art as being more yellow, daytime sky, where the North American box art, when it was finally released, had a beautiful blue, nighttime sky. As a child, I wrote and illustrated how DKR should be on the back of my 7th grade math work. I added Gobi, Barry, Kazooie, and Mumbo to the roster. It then became a recurring doodle as I created a ton of DKU-related follow-ups and shared them with my fake Elliot. I love this game so much I built the hub world Timbers Island Disney Infinity under my account Christopher Skywalken. I love the collision of Disney worlds, which is exactly what Diddy Kong Racing is. It has everything, frogs and all, in my creation. And finally, I was searching through the Wayback Machine and found an old thread in the old DK Vine forum where I answered a question and then asked the question. I'll read that now. He just has extremely loose handling. The only thing good about him is that he's fast. Pipsy and Tip Top are the slowest characters, but they have the tightest handling, and TT's handling is about in the middle with Diddy. This brings up an interesting topic. We keep talking about the characters in Super Smash Bros. Melee and who he'd be, but what other characters do you think will be in DOKR? I primarily played as Pipsy and Tip Top in DKR. Anyway, I hope this voice message isn't late, and if it is, then I hope your wife is late, Hyle, and I hope that baby is beautiful.
Oh, thank you for the call. Oh, great to hear a first-time caller. And I remember the Disney Infinity thing. I remember featuring that on the Facebook page. That was terrific and surreal. And I was like, wow, this weirdo loves Diddy Kong Racing. And clearly you do. So it was delightful hearing your call and your nostalgic memories of your various school doodles. I can remember being in the same boat doing doodles of Espresso the Ostrich, not related to Diddy Kong Racing, but I can just relate to that mentality of you are trapped in class and it's a miserable slog of an experience. You can't have your pudding if you don't eat your meat, kind of thing, and just fantasizing about these games that I love, this world that I love to escape to every afternoon and weekend. And yeah, oh man, remembering the Donkey Kong Racing roster speculation. That truly the greatest crime of not getting that game is we did not have a full development cycle to speculate about that. And of course, then we eventually saw more of the roster, and it was only Taj from Diddy Kong Racing was in there. It was lanky and cranky, and I was like, what is this? It's still cool, but Anyway, thank you for the call. Please call in again. That was a terrific jaunt down your memory lane, your space dust alley, if it were, and it is. Okay, next call.
Hey, hopefully this call isn't coming in too late. This is Cody, aka Captain Cheesebag. I just wanted to share a thought, /memory /question kind of thing. I was super into Nintendo Power, and I kind of poured over their rare features, so I was really kind of obsessed with 12 Tales, constantly wanting it. So I more or less kind of picked up Diddy Kong Racing, or I say picked up, I kind of asked for it for my birthday, since my birthday is December 1st, just a week after it came out. But I wanted it because of Conker. So even though I was stoked to have Diddy and Banjo in it as well, and I remember in the Nintendo Power Diddy Kong Racing article, they had all of the characters with little snippets to describe who they were. But I was most excited about Conker, and I remember Conker said in that article, nuts, I was supposed to be in Rare's first game. And as a kid, I didn't know he meant on the Nintendo 64, so I got confused and I thought Conker was supposed to be in Jetpack. Anyway, beyond that, I also thought that it was intended to be a Rare cameo game featuring main characters from upcoming titles, and that every character, like Pipsy, Crunch, and Bumper, was going to get their own game in the future. I remember thinking Pipsy's would be sort of like a top-down game like Rat Attack, and for some reason I thought Bumper's would be sort of like Spyro the Dragon. I don't know why. So if that would have happened, what would you have wanted for the rest, like Drumstick or a Tip-Top game? Maybe about having as many kids as possible to get the biggest tax break or something. Yeah, what would you want? Oh, also, real quick, if someone wanted to join and be active on the forum, where's a good place to start? Like, if you don't want to get chewed out for reposting things that have already been talked about, or it's a little overwhelming. I'm asking for a friend, because I'm friends with myself. Best friends.
Thank you for the call, Captain Cheesebag. Well, like, I've long since let go of the weird fantasy that every Diddy Kong Racing character is going to get their own spin-off. That ship has sailed across the Sea of Thieves, and it is sunk beneath the Sea of Thieves. I think the best thing we can hope for is weird circumstances like Tricky. Like, okay, let's say TT is in Sea of Thieves. We've been kind of like laughing about it and hinting at it, but it's a very real possibility at this point. If TT is in Sea of Thieves, then technically Sea of Thieves is another Diddy Kong Racing prequel, and technically we can say it's a spin-off game with TT, even if he plays just a very minor part as an item. Nonetheless, I think that's the best case scenario. I think the days of hoping like, Bumper will get his own game are far gone. But what I would hope to see would be Bumper incorporated into the Conquer franchise as it's tip-top. Pipsy, I think I brought up, I would love, to see her kind of take on that sci-fi protagonist role of Astro Mouse. Timber, I would want to see have a Donkey Kong Country style ACM-ish 2D side-scroller made by Rare for the Xbox platform, kind of taking his role as a Diddy, a second Diddy, and made manifest and actually give him a Donkey Kong Country style platformer, so Rare could make that and kind of build on what they did for Donkey Kong without having to do a Donkey Kong game. Besides that, just weird, surprise me, weird shit like TT in Sea of Thieves is just delightful to me. And like, I never would have thought Tricky was a space alien from the Lilat system. I never would have thought TT might be some sort of enchanted stopwatch, that pirates created. So, yeah, just keep you on my toes. Bring back the Diddy Kong Racing characters in weird and surprising ways, but keep using them because they should be bigger icons than they are. And as far as joining the DK Vine forum, just join and be yourself and carry that enthusiasm into it, and you'll be fine. We're long past the days where we care about arcane rules and small like procedural slights against like, oh, you reposted something, oh, you bumped an old topic, oh, there's already a topic for this 7 years ago, you idiot, you're banned. Yeah, we're not dickish teenagers anymore. So just be yourself. If you're intelligent and you're funny and you have and you are, yeah, as your calls have demonstrated and your comments in the live stream chats, then you will be right at home. Thank you for the call.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's the Dane Train, long-time listener, first-time caller. Today, you guys are covering a game that was near and dear to my young heart, and I was thinking, for a sequel, a true sequel to Diddy Kong Racing, we don't get a Diddy Kong Racing 2, rather a Conquer Racing, maybe like Conquer's Bad Raceway, or I don't know. You guys are more clever than I am. But here's the catch. You play through the entirety of the game, and there's disappointingly a small amount of, Conquer aesthetics, right? There aren't any inappropriate jokes. It's just a kid-friendly, romp through several tracks and worlds, right? But you finally collect all the collectibles, you beat the final boss, and there's just a grotesque and unusual, almost pornographic kick right at the end. Alright, well, thank you.
Oh, another first-time caller. Thank you for the call. I would like to imagine a true Conquer Racing game that utilizes the mature aesthetics of Bad Fur Day and Live and Reloaded would be a race to liver failure. Like which Conquer character can drink themselves to death first? That is the Conquer Racing game that I think would be most appropriate. Other than that, I don't know. You could do the hoverboards like from off of the caveman area where you race the caveman hover bike gang. But I like my idea of drinking yourself to death better. Thanks for the call.
Hi, DK Vine. On Average Joe here, calling in for the Diddy Kong Racing episode. I remember the first time I popped this bad boy into the console and oh, the awesome levels. Ancient Lane, Fossil Canyon just blew me away. I even heard, I don't know if this is true or not, or if you already mentioned it, but I heard that Crescent Island inspired the people of Naughty Dog so much that's how they made Crash Tag Team Racing. And the music on long road trips without the wife or family, I listen to Ancient Lake on loop. No shame. And my friends and I back then would talk about trying to beat those tough as nails points challenges, bosses, and trying to find those damn witch keys. I'm looking at you, Sherbert Islands. And then we would meet up on weekends to play battle modes for hours. The best memories were laughing about Taj, the drunken genie, because it sounded like he was singing beer over and over again to the overworld theme. And my headcanon was he was ready to get shit-faced. He was on the way to tavern because he accidentally let Wizpig take over the island. And, well, okay, for those of you who don't know, before Sunday sermons in church, there were small group meetings of different age groups, where the teacher would talk about the stuff that usually applied to our age group. So one week we were talking about the excess of video games and how that would lead to laziness, sloth, shirking of responsibilities, not paying attention, and there were probably more, but a kid was playing Donkey Kong Racing in the background for the video that they were showing, and the only thing I could think of was, man, I could love to play some Diddy Kong Racing about right now. But what made this game truly special for me was the world building and the lore. As a guy who just digs that stuff, when I saw the instruction manual mention Kazooie, and then I saw Tip Top Conquer, I nearly flipped. I remember thinking, holy crap, I wonder if I can see DK Hyle or Isle Hags in one of the backgrounds. But anyway, I think I've rambled long enough. Thanks for listening, and if any of that Diddy Kong Racing staff is listening, thank you. Just thank you. Anyway, keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you for the call, On Average Joe, and I think you have just made the best case for us actually starting a true church of Taj, where playing Diddy Kong Racing in Sunday school is not only allowed, it's mandatory. And we would also put googly eyes on everything to the point where it would become disconcerting and bothersome and, quite honestly, demoralizing after a certain point in time. But, whatever. That's religion for you. No, thank you for the call. And, just great to hear everybody who called in and just, I guess, hear your memories of Diddy Kong Racing, how much it meant to you, because really, I mean, it meant a lot to us. It is the game that built the Donkey Kong universe as we call it and know it. And, God, I mean, I can't even imagine not having this game. And, you know, as much as I loved Donkey Kong Country and Land games, Diddy Kong Racing just elevated everything to such a whole nother level and really expanded the possibilities for this fictional world, this rare archipelago. And I mean, we look at all the crazy directions this shared universe has spun off into in the 20 years since. I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway, thanks for the call. Thanks for the calls. The legacy of Diddy Kong Racing. Now, this is something we talked about at the beginning of the episode, and honestly, in bits and pieces over the last two episodes. But Diddy Kong Racing is a game that should cast a far longer shadow than it does, and I would argue that the only reason it doesn't is because of the complicated legal rights issues. If this was a game that was owned by Nintendo, it would be considered a modern classic that Nintendo fans of multiple generations would cherish, that we would see referenced in Smash Brothers. Well, I mean, in at least trophies. You would...
Not even that overtly specifically, but it's just weird to me that Diddy Kong Racing was and still is often referred to as the game that created a genre. But you look at how many games fit within that genre, it's a pretty small list.
And honestly, I think part of it is because as Diddy Kong Racing did this so well, but you look at the continued monster success of Mario Kart, and I'm sure when people sit down to develop kart racers, they have to say, well, we could put this adventure mode in there, but why bother? Because Mario Kart hasn't needed it in its entire existence. Through 8+ games, Mario Kart has not needed any additional frills or gimmicks or incentives to play it. And there's no reason for us to have it either. And I think that's unfortunate if that's the case, because I really think if somebody seriously sat down and made not just a spiritual successor to Diddy Kong Racing, but actually looked to improve on Diddy Kong Racing to make a more robust version of Diddy Kong Racing, that would be a game that would be very, very popular. I would at least hope.
I think I have to agree, and it's always... I feel like I always see elements of Diddy Kong Racing return, but they're in piecemeal. They're not the whole. Like, a few years after Diddy Kong Racing came out, I already mentioned Crash Team Racing, and a few years after that, Lego Racers had a very similar item system. It didn't have an adventure mode. Perhaps the most significant, one of my favorite racing games of the last decade, probably my favorite racing game other than Diddy Kong Racing itself, and even that's mostly weighted in its nostalgia for me, is Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, which, as I alluded to earlier, was a modern racer that brought back it brought back the plane. It had boats rather than hovercrafts, and it had cars, but rather than splitting them between different tracks, your vehicle would change mid-track. That had a career mode. It did not have an adventure mode, but until further notice, I kind of feel like that's the closest thing I've played personally that's felt like a spiritual successor to Diddy Kong Racing to me, and it's a very solid game. Joe Neat, currently at Rare, headed that one up. So
right,
worth a play if you haven't.
Yeah, and the entire existence of the Kongversation has been in the shadow of the potential of a Diddy Kong Racing sequel. It is something that the fan base desperately wants. We've had rumors, we've had hearsay, but we've seen potential sequels be announced and then get canceled. It's just been a very discouraging 20 years waiting for that true successor. And no, Diddy Kong Racing DS, we can joke all we want. We can say it does have a separate place in the timeline, but that does not count as a legitimate follow-up to Diddy Kong Racing. We want a sequel, and, but the truth of the matter is, if Nintendo were to make it, it would not be the same as Rare's game. And if Rare were to make it, it could not have the Diddy Kong Racing lineage. They can only make, a spiritual successor that at the very least could have Banjo and Conker in it. And all the other characters, Sans, Diddy, and Crunch, and maybe Tricky. But, this is kind of the best case scenario is also the most far-fetched, and that's Nintendo and Rare working together to make some sort of follow-up. And I'm really hoping when they announce the N64 Classic, some sort of deal is reached so we can finally see Diddy Kong Racing be made available to modern gamers. That would be the coolest hook of the N64 Classic. Star Fox 2 was obviously the hook for the SNES Classic. Having Diddy Kong Racing in the N64 Classic, I think, would be a big, big deal.
I think so. And even GoldenEye falls under the same umbrella. I feel like you have some plausibility with a product like that you maybe don't have with the major consoles themselves, because things like the NES Classic, the Super NES Classic, they aren't major consoles competing in really the same market as the Xbox One, the Switch, the PS4. They're novelties.
Right.
And the case could be made, since it's not competing, it's not encroaching on the territory of either Microsoft or Nintendo to offer those games on that product. And I think that could maybe be the way to a deal.
Well, you brought up GoldenEye, so there's always the possibility that Activision could just remake Diddy Kong Racing, but replace him with Daniel Craig.
This has been a File 2 production.